for any increases in the number of existing bedrooms. Oh, God.
Do you have to read the whole thing, Madam Clerk?
That's what I was left.
Yeah, that's what I know. I'm just wondering if it all has to be read in since it's part of the record.
Since it is a part of the record, I don't have to read.
There you go. All right.
Thank you, but I have to read your
Just
amendment.
trying to do my little part
I
here.
appreciate it.
All right, members, you have an amendment in front of you. Before we vote, what I'd like to do is go through public comment first, and we have some comment online. And then I know I would like to make some comment, as would Councilmember Harris.
So can I read the amendment first? and
Yes,
then I'll call
ma'am.
back?
Yes, ma'am, please do.
We have an amendment to a motion M22-449. On page is by council members Jeruso and Harris. On page 2, delete subsection 2.c.I in its entirety and replace with the following I. Bedrooms shall be defined as an enclosed room that cannot be used for any other purpose, such as a kitchen, bathroom, living room, or laundry room. Any room not explicitly labeled as a kitchen, bathroom, living room, or laundry room shall be counted as a bedroom.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, since we're on basically the fifth substantive item today, I'm going to try and ask everybody to hew closely to the 2-minute limit. And if you need a little bit more time, obviously I'll try and help out. So with that, Michael Burnside, Bob Morrell, Zach Smith, and Maxwell Hdlc.
Hello, Councilman Jeruso.
Good afternoon, sir.
As you know, I live in a really, really small house, and I suspect that a garage would take up more space than I would take up. I think the underlying problem here is that Tulane University doesn't have the housing on campus that it needs for its students. And so in the process of allowing its students to live off campus, it encourages an economic situation that is a long-term undermining of community. There's an ongoing economic incentive to make a profit. It's one of the driving forces of our society. And as long as there are children who have rich parents who will pay very nice amounts of money to house them off campus, the children are going to go off campus. And as a newspaper article said, there was a gentleman, a developer, who has 8 students, and the 8 students have 1 car. So the idea that we're going to somehow stop doubles to dorms through the methodology of using parking as an enforcement opportunity is not one I agree with. I hope that there is some method, maybe you have friends on the board of Tulane, but there is some method of looking at other universities who have faced the same problem of making enemies, quite frankly, out of their neighbors, and hopefully deciding to build housing on campus for their students. Housing on campus for their students should be part of what a higher educational facility offers its participants.
You see Councilmember Harris and I shaking our heads, and I know Tulane has submitted a comment today, Mr. Burnside, where they talk about additional housing, but that's years in the making, except for some new units that will come online in 2023. So we got to deal with this now. Thank you for your comment. All right, Bob Morrell, Zach Smith, and then Maxwell Hdlc.
Good afternoon, Bob Morrell, 6334 Canal Boulevard. I'm speaking in opposition of this motion because just like the last time this IZD was attempted to and successfully got expanded, it was sold as if it were a means to deter these types of developments. But one of the things that got brought up last time, and I'm bringing up again this time, is people that are just trying to have growing families. Thankfully, I have a kid that's on the way in December. We are running out of space for kids, right? So we're trying to rework existing bedrooms into multiple bedrooms. I don't think that my newborn is going to have a parking spot anytime, hopefully within the next decade or two. But the point that keeps coming up is that the violators of all of these issues, these developers, are continuing to violate. These types of laws are not deterrents. They only deter actual affordable housing development. They unfortunately also incur more flooding issues. And I know the permeable concrete was brought up last time, but I think what we're getting at the root of the issue is that we're trying to, come up with a solution by legislating this when it really comes down to enforcement. Came down to it last time and it continues to do that. This is just another law that they'll violate. So I please ask to oppose this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Zach Smith, then Maxwell.
Good afternoon, Council. Here to speak in opposition today. I'm not being directly paid on this project, but I do have some clients that I think it would affect. But leaving the kind of general 2-lane area alone, I'm a little worried with how expansive this IZD has gotten. As a former property owner in the Holly Grove and Dixon area, I'm very nervous about an area that is actually ripe for development that has hundreds of empty vacant lots that could really use some continued kind of housing built on it, and worried that this kind of excessive parking requirement may be a detriment to anybody building. There's been a very good organic amount of growth in the Holly Grove area, and looking at a typical house that may be 3 or 4 bedrooms having to provide extra parking may encourage people to build up so that they can provide their parking underneath, which would probably be against the architectural aesthetic in that area. And or it would require people to just seek property elsewhere as they may have a legislative burden. So there's obviously some positions in some other places, but specifically looking at the expansion of this to something where I think there's some other areas in town that we want to encourage development. And I think this may be a bit too far. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Maxwell Shirdolo, then Keith Hardy, Susan Johnson, and Sheila Delaney. That'll be the last public comment.
Thank you. Maxwell Chardula, Louisiana Fair Housing Action Center. Councilmember Giroux, I know we've talked about this, so I'm just going to say it for the benefit of everyone. But you've convinced me that double dorms are a serious issue, that they are a totally separate thing from our regular rental market, and that they are increasing housing prices. I'm with you, and I want to work on this, but I'm also really disappointed by this IZD because I think it is too narrowly tailored, or it's not narrowly tailored enough. And it's going to also raise prices for your residents. So there are definitely 2 different housing markets here. There's a market for doubles to dorms developers who are looking to cram as many bedrooms into one piece of property and extract as much rent as possible from their wealthy parents. And then there's our typical rental market for residents, which is in crisis and has been in crisis for a long time. And in that market, the greatest need is for 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. That's what's typically being produced when you look at market rate rentals that are being built. And what this IZD does is it says for the next 6 months or for however long, we're going to treat the D2D developer and a developer of a 2-bedroom apartment exactly the same. We're going to increase their costs, try and make it impossible for them to build, and at the very least, slow them down and cost them more money. And so to me, I don't see the sense in why we would do that, why we would try and stop construction or increase the price of 2-bedroom units in Marleyville, in Broadmoor, in Holly Grove, in Leonidas, or anywhere else.
30 more seconds.
It seems like unnecessary collateral damage that's going to increase housing prices and scarcity. And so I would ask you to reconsider that piece, or at the very least, let's keep this in place for as short as possible and find a solution that actually works and doesn't hurt our residents too.
Thank you, Max. Appreciate it. All right, Mr. Hardy, Ms. Johnson, and Ms. Delaney.
Good evening, Keith Hardy, 618 Audubon. D2Ds are not affordable housing. 4-bedroom units begin about $4,000 a month. HUD fair market rate for a 4-bedroom is $1,600 a month. D2Ds, because they are so lucrative, drive out other forms of housing and drive up the cost of housing. That's why Mr. Ciardella's problem about building doubles, he can't do it because the D2D guys are coming in and paying more than he can afford to pay for the property and still make it affordable. D2Ds prevent locals from buying starter homes and building wealth. Developers frequently offer over asking price. D2Ds are not designed for locals. the most desired housing type, according to Hanno, are 1 bedroom and 2 bed and studio units. D2Ds are 4 bedroom units. D2Ds create density unlike anything we've ever seen before in Carrollton. 10 bedrooms in a shotgun double, 16 in a 2-family district. The CDZO describes Carrollton as already being a quote, having dense development patterns.
30
It's
seconds.
never been this dense. The biggest issue here for me is the loss of neighborhood cohesion, because D2D tenants turn over yearly. Residents no longer know who lives next door. Temporary residents are not invested in the neighborhood or in the future of the city. We have a history of being a city of neighborhoods. D2Ds are antithetical to neighborhoods.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. Ms. Johnson, and then to wrap up public comment, Ms. Delaney.
Susan Johnson, 2822 LePage Street, Town of Carrollton Watch LLC. I am not paid to be here. I want to say that I agree that parking is not a very good mechanism or device by which to control development. But this IZD is what we've got. It worked fairly well the first time around. And
Keep on.
I would like to thank you for your support of the new IZD. We've got a new wave of development in the neighborhood in the past year, with new developers showing up every couple of months to buy and convert our homes for commercial profit in our residential zone neighborhoods. We neighbors are responding with Hdlc appeals and BZA appeals. New topic. I would like to request that speakers at city agency meetings on land use matters should be required to sign the comment card with an affirmation that their statement is true and correct, just like the recent provision on the city council comment cards. This is a request for land use matters across the city, including the CBD. Certification that statements made in land use matters are true and correct. I'm not going to tell you why I'm asking for this. It seems self-evident.
30 more seconds.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, it's a good point, Susan. Thank you for making. All right, last speaker, Sheila Delaney. There you are.
Hi, Council President Moreno and council members. My name is Sheila Delaney. I'm a 7th Ward resident. My work address is Zach Smith Design and Consulting, 530 Norman C. Francis Parkway. I'm not being paid to be here, but as Zach mentioned, our clients will be impacted by this should it pass. I'm here because I'd be here whether or not it impacted our clients, because this ordinance is contrary to what I personally want to see happen in New Orleans, and contrary to what I've heard many of you say you're working towards, and those things are growing the population of New Orleans, creating more affordable housing in general, but especially creating more opportunities in the heart of the city, investing in areas that need healthy investments, such as Holly Grove and parts of Gert Town. Both of those areas, this would significantly impair construction of doubles with more than 2 total bedrooms. This is a housing type characteristic of these areas, and they have significant vacant buildable land. I also object to the ordinance because I believe what you're trying to do is deal with conflicts between students and other residents. These conflicts are to be expected, and it appears you're trying to address them by legislating. And I would ask you, do you really think you can solve these conflicts by legislation? I don't think it's possible. Finally, reducing housing options for students has consequences. It's unwelcoming to students. It reduces the likelihood of them making New Orleans their home. Only students from wealthy families will be able to afford rent in New Orleans. And most importantly, it reduces the net amount of housing of all types available, which adds to our affordable housing crisis. I do
30 more seconds.
Thanks. I want to acknowledge that universities should be doing more, but the biggest issue is what you're trying to do, what you're doing will not address what I think you're trying to address. I think there are other tools such as good neighbor agreements. They have been very successful in other areas, and I'd be happy to discuss. Finally, adding more parking at this historic moment is not contributing to a resilient city. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, Anita, will you please read, I guess, no more than 10 minutes of public comment? I think start with the 2 opposition comments, and then we'll go from there. Thank you.
And let me just get my opposition. And the first opposition is from Andronika Morris. The original intended impact of the university area interim off-street zoning district was to discourage outside developers from buying property in the Carrollton neighborhood to create student housing, but the parking restrictions enforced by this IZD only prohibit affordable housing developers from building in this area. Wealthy student housing developers can afford to bypass the parking rule by either lifting the building or paving the backyards to add parking spots. Moreover, with the increase in housing costs caused by this measure, the only people who will be able to afford to rent in this neighborhood will be the population that the regulation was originally seeking to push out, university students. There are better solutions to address student housing than to completely prevent all other potential affordable housing development altogether. I implore the council to deny this motion. And Marion Martin comments, proposing another university area IZD is bad policy that promotes poor planning to both affordable housing and a reliable public transit. It does not properly solve the issue at hand, excessive student housing development, and will only further displace low-income families and renters from this high opportune neighborhood. The first in favor, we have Lynette Judge. I strongly support the IZD. Please help preserve the long-term residential nature of our neighborhood and stop converting family homes into dormitories for students. The Central Carrollton Residents Association, being represented by Paul Barricos, says it's in support of the agenda item number 69, motion M22-449, interim zoning district. Over the past year, there has been a proliferation of residential housing in Carrollton being converted by developers to doubles to dormitories, i.e. student housing designed and appropriate only for dormitory style living and rented by the bedroom at exorbitant prices. There is not a single affordable unit among them. This is taking place despite the zoning overlay district adopted by City Council in November 2021, designed to decrease this type of destructive development. We urge you to adopt the IZD, which besides the expansion to include more uptown neighborhoods is identical to the one adopted in March 2020 and worked well, and to consider changes to the current overlay that will make our neighborhoods viable and affordable to current and future homeowners and renters, including students, as well as housing developers. Next comment is from Elizabeth Kropp, who says, I support M22-449. Marilyn Wolf comments she's in support of this motion. Sharon Courtney says she is a paid representative. She's writing on behalf of Tulane University to express the university's support of M22-449. We appreciate the uniqueness of every New Orleans neighborhood and know they are a draw for many Tulane students. We also recognize that university students can unintentionally add pressure to a neighborhood. Tulane is actively working to reduce pressure on neighborhood housing by constructing new residence halls. When all components of the village are complete, we will have 1,200 new beds and more juniors will return to living on campus. Additionally, Tulane staff continuously educates our students on Tulane values and being a good neighbor. We sponsor neighborhood trash pickups during move-in, winter break, Mardi Gras, graduation, and move out. We also provide weekly maintenance and litter pickup of the Broadway Street neutral ground. Tulane Police Department patrols our designated campus perimeter and responds to any calls within the area. When responding to calls involving Tulane students, they generate a report which starts the student conduct process. They also issue municipal summonses after students have received one warning. In addition, M22-449 449, we hope the city council will work to strengthen the city's ability to improve housing standards for all New Orleanians. Kenneth Gilpy comments, I'm a resident of the affected area and request that you pass the proposed motion and implement the IZD. Although student apartments and residents have long coexisted with manageable issues, recent student housing development often seeks to skirt the intent and letter of the law. Some of the most egregious investors and managers have been cited for flaunting city laws on numerous occasions. These student apartments or student boarding houses have a significant negative effect in the community. Long-term residents are increasingly displaced. Historic and pleasing architectural aspects of buildings is being lost, and residential neighborhoods are being lost. Single-family homes and small duplexes are regularly being converted into structures housing 16 students plus guests. I personally have witnessed parking problems which have prohibited fire trucks, ambulances, and garbage trucks from being able to pass down city streets. Garbage is ubiquitous and general upkeep is often lacking. The city's 100-plus-year-old neighborhoods and infrastructure was not built for these types of uses. The IZD is necessary until a permanent solution to this problem can be implemented. Bill Ives comments, I support Joe Giarrusso in his work to protect our neighborhoods from the double to dorms plague caused by greedy developers. They're converting residential units into multi-bedroom student dorms so they can make more money at the expense of residents. Please vote for his new IZD while we still have residents in our neighborhoods. Mark O'Shea comments, I support the IZD. John DeLeo says in support of the IZD. Claudia Garofalo, I'm in support of the new proposed IZD. Allie McNally comments in support. Barbara C. Ewell, I strongly support this motion and concept. Chris Shurich says in support. Deborah Howell comments, I'm writing to ask for your support for a new university area interim zoning district to give the students and the council breathing room to improve and strengthen the current parking overlay and help curtail the ongoing destructive aspects of doubles to dorms, which are commercial student dormitories in residentially zoned districts. The council recently had to create an interim zoning district for short-term rental permits in reaction to a court ruling upending and weakening the city's STR regulations. For the third time since 2016, a new set of regulations for that particular type of intrusive commercial development in residential neighborhoods will need to be written. But STRs and D2Ds are almost identical in terms of the problems they create and the deleterious effects they have on residential neighborhoods, and they both need to be defined, regulated, and restricted in similar fashions. In fact, just as short-term rental had to be added to the CZO only a few years ago, we need a new use definition added to our zoning code for these commercial dormitories so they can be regulated in the same way as STRs. Since 2018, 79 properties in the area adjacent to Tulane have been converted to commercial dormitories, including 27 homes that lost homestead exemptions in the sale. Both STRs and D2Ds replace long-term residents, make home and rental prices unaffordable, and disrupt the fabric of the neighborhoods by replacing full-time residents with transient ones. The University Carrollton area has also lost hundreds of affordable long-term rentals and their tenants in the past few years due to the relentless property purchases by dormitory developers, many of them non-local investors who evict all the long-term tenants in order to convert the units to furnished rooms for students at $1,000 to $2,000 a room. The effect of squeezing 8 to 10 or more tenants into properties that traditionally housed 1 or 2 residents or families brings disruption, increased trash, noise, and loss of on-street parking to every block unfortunate enough to have them. Thank you for your assistance. David Ferrer says, I'm in favor of Joe Giarrusso's new IZD to inhibit doubles to dorms. The D2Ds are destroying the fabric of the neighbors, which have existed well over 120 years. Robert Strain says, I support this motion. This IZD is needed. Double to dorms are destroying the neighborhood and soon others. The overall quality of life for everyone affected has gone down. The parking issue aside, they have brought transient renters who take no ownership or have any interest in the neighborhood. Only one out of all the student renters on my street will even respond when you greet them. What used to be a clean, beautiful street is now cluttered all the time with overflowing trash cans out in the street at these houses. These houses have become commercial establishments among what should be quiet residential neighborhoods. These developers are not doing this to improve the neighborhood, as they say. They are built purely for profit with no regard to anything else but that. These double dorms are only meant for students, not professionals or families. Regular renters and buyers are being displaced. Affordable housing is being lost at an astonishing rate.
Thank you, Anita.
Sure.
Can I say this one thing though? Did you get to Loyola's comment?
That was the last one. No, I haven't gotten to it.
All right.
Want me to
Yeah,
read
we
it?
just read it very quickly, please, because I think it
Yeah.
completes the record.
This is from Sharonda Williams, representing Loyola University. I'm the Director of Government Affairs at Loyola University. We've been working to identify our students who are impacted by the properties at issue in this motion. Loyola is very concerned about the health and welfare of our students and will ensure that any student living in unsafe conditions finds suitable housing. Loyola is currently planning the construction of a new residence hall to increase the availability of safe housing on campus. But we are equally concerned about the safety of our off-campus students, and we support this motion as a step to ensure our student safety. We look forward to continuing to work with the council and other elected officials to make sure safe off-campus housing options are available to our students.
Thank you. All right. I want to say a couple things, and then I'm going to quickly go through my PowerPoint and not belabor it. I know Councilmember Harris wants to say something. The arguments against this are basically that this is good for development and or saying things that are simply inaccurate. I go to neighborhood meetings in District A and now some in District B. Hollygrove, Central Carrollton, Carrollton United, Carrollton Riverbend, Maple area, Black Pearl, Uptown, and now Marleyville, Fontainebleau, and Broadmoor all support this IZD. As we saw before with City Hall, trying to get 3 or 4 neighborhood organizations on a similar page is not easy. Having this many groups saying that this is a scourge in their neighborhood should be a wake-up call to everybody who says otherwise. The other thing that is worth remembering is in the past, when we had the IZD, there were a total of essentially 2 appeals. 2. And that was when it was in place for over a year. So this notion that there's all of this development, whether affordable or otherwise, that is being killed isn't what the facts show. And granted, one of the appeals was for 4 or 5 properties, but it was all related. So essentially 2. Moreover, one of the compromises that we tried to make in the overlay was to allow development of these dormitories either in HUMU districts or in commercial districts. According to mapping done by the residents, and thank you, Susan, for sending this to me, of the 92 different doubles to dorms that the neighbors were able to find, only 1 right now is in a HUB1 district. If that is incorrect, I will accept something that shows me otherwise, but everything else is in either HURD1, RM1 or 2, or RS. Moreover, we hear repeatedly that creating more density and eliminating parking is what creates affordable housing. But that is being perverted by the developers here. They are taking property that is used for single or families and then converting it so nobody else can live there. So with that, I want to show the PowerPoint because I think the inaccuracies that we keep on hearing are best shown by evidence rather than empty phrases. First, let's just start with the CZO itself. Here's direct from HURS and HURD1, and this is what it talks about that's supposed to go there. Higher density, limited non-residential uses such as places of worship, historic neighborhood commercial developments, and recreational facilities in HURS. HURD1, same thing. Places of worship, historic neighborhood commercial establishment, and recreational facilities. Nothing about cramming as many students as possible into things that are supposed to be for either residential districts or multifamily development. Next, please. All right. This is 7425 and 27 Hampson. There used to be 8 parking spaces there. And after this was converted, they took away 5 of the parking spaces. It appears took away the permeable concrete and replaced it with regular concrete and then put a tanning pad there instead. I would argue with anybody who tells me this is good development. Next slide. This is a 1615 Pine Street. We're going to show you extra bedrooms and an alleged study that's being added, because I think to the points that have been made, the hard part is defining what a bedroom is, because people call it studies or dining rooms or other things, again, to stay one step ahead of the enforcement. Next slide, please. So before the D2D, you had 3 bedrooms downstairs, 2 bedrooms upstairs, and now you have 11 bedrooms. That is not for people who either want 1 bedroom or 2 bedrooms. It isn't. And so, again, I want to show this because I think it's important when we're talking about how we are creating housing and talking about available housing, what is truly being done here. Next slide. Here's an example of 7314 Zimple with the add-on. Next slide. All right. Here is 7314 Zimple, which is being advertised as $1,600 for 1 bedroom. You could almost rent out a double for that amount of money. And here we're taking 1 bedroom out of the 5 that are here and monetizing it in such a way that no ordinary renter or family could possibly afford. This is a slide we showed last time, that somebody's advertising that by doing this, you can make $96,000 a year by leasing. Again, you are not going to have people who can rent or own when you are incentivizing people to convert this, not for the sake of development, for families, for renters, for owners, but for people to commercialize neighborhoods unnecessarily. Next slide. This is 817, 819 Adams. Again, $1,500 per bedroom. So a property where maybe you could rent out before for $1,500 or $2,500 for the whole unit, you now can make 4 or 5 times that amount because of the rent being per bedroom instead. Next slide. Before I get to what the IZD does, I think it's important to point out that you are really taking homes and destroying them right now. I hear a lot in these chambers about affordability and making sure that we have places for people to live. But what's happening right now is, number one, as Mr. Hardy said, these properties are being bought above market, so it makes it hard for regular people to compete. Number two, they're being converted, so it's impossible for anybody who wants to live there otherwise, who isn't a student, to be able to do it. Number three, the rents are much higher, so ordinary people cannot possibly afford it. People have to do it by the bedrooms, and the a la carte menu that's being offered is so expensive that nobody can eat there unless you're an out-of-state student who's paying that kind of money. You are simply driving people out of homes. And I would say this, I have not seen people who are opposed to this at any of the neighborhood meetings. You want to come and offer solutions to these neighbors, you're welcome to come to any of the neighborhoods where I am and talk to them about the scourge that they're experiencing with parking, with students, with cramming, with infrastructure, with noise, with all the other quality of life problems they're experiencing, because candidly, I haven't seen you there. And if you want to come be part of the solution, then come please sit at the table and propose solutions rather than just saying what you're against. Then the IZD itself, which is much easier to enforce than the overlay, requires 1 off-street parking space. We're now expanding, and I'm going to leave that more to Councilmember Harris. It doesn't exempt commercial properties for the time being. It can be appealed to the city council, and I think last time, and Claire, correct me if I'm wrong, we granted both of the appeals in that case, one of whom was actually for a young man who had a family and was adding on for a nursery for his new child. And this is a temporary stopgap until we can tighten the rules on the overlay again. So I think everybody, and particularly my colleagues, I know today is going to be a long day, but this involves a considerable part of my district and now bleeding into Councilmember Harris's district. And I think having to take this swift and necessary action is needed at this time. Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Councilmember Jeruso. As you indicated, I'm doing this motion because this issue of doubles to dorms is creeping into District B and into some of our most vulnerable communities that are already being overtaken by short-term rentals that are illegal and legal commercial short-term rentals. So what we're going to see is not only temporary student housing, but also an increase in commercial STRs, which is a whole nother topic. But I just want everybody to understand that our housing stock for Native New Orleanians and people who plan to make their homes here, affordable housing stock is depleting at a rapid rate. So that's why I'm joining in to this IZD. I've met with neighborhoods who want to be included in this, and we at the District B office will take additional calls and meetings with other areas of District B who want to be included in this IZD. But for now, I think that this is a good preliminary step to protecting the district. Again, I just think that we have to protect our current housing stock to ensure that we have affordable housing for people who live here, for people who want to move here, and not people who are just here for a moment in time. I do want to address the issue of university housing, having worked at Loyola, attended Tulane University. The universities, as I understand, are trying to increase their housing stock. That behooves both the universities and our community because the universities can make more money by increasing their housing stock and housing more students. But that solution is long-term. It's not in the short term. So this short-term step, I believe, is a way to preserve and protect our housing stock, ensure that there's affordable housing, and to protect our vulnerable neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments by any other council member? All right, with that, I will move on the amendment. Second by Councilmember Harris.
Thank you.
6 yeas, no nays, and now on the motion as amended. Waiting on one more. Still waiting on one more. 6 yeas, no nays. Thank you very much.
Council members, we're now going to go to page 35. Councilmember Moreno. Lady, she told me to go to this, so Councilmember Moreno wanted me to go to. All right. We're now on top of page 35. We have a legislative grouping ordinance calendar number 33,867 by Councilmember Moreno. An ordinance to amend and reordain sections 2-871 and 2-873 of the Code of the City of New Orleans relative to the inspection and public reporting of information related to the condition of public immovable property and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. The Economic and Development and Special Project Committee recommended approval. We have an amendment, ordinance calendar number 33,867 by Councilmember Moreno. On page 1, line 6, after the words each parcel of, insert the following, unoccupied. On page 3, line 38, delete the following, if any. That is the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Before I take up the amendment, let me explain what this does. We've had a full hearing on this, and this deals with city-owned vacant properties or lots. And while we all know that we want these city properties that are inactive to, of course, be put back into commerce, to be redevelopment, in the meantime, these properties should be kept up. They should not be blighted. They should not be contributing to quality of life issues in neighborhoods. But unfortunately, that is what we're seeing with some city-owned vacant properties. So what this particular ordinance does is it requires property management to take a look at the different vacant properties. And for those that are in poor or dilapidated condition, they need to do an assessment as to what it will cost to make sure that these properties are maintained and secured, meaning that they won't be covered in graffiti, that the grasses won't be, you know, as tall as I am, that they will be secured so that to protect from people going in and out of these properties as well. And so that assessment occurs, and then they come back to the council with a particular budget to make sure that all these properties can be secured. And then the council will work with property management to ensure that the funding's in place and that these properties can be maintained and secured. The amendment that I have makes it very clear that what we want with this particular assessment is only for the roughly, you know, 70 or so inactive properties that we have, not all 500 city-owned properties. So that's what the amendment does. I'll move on the amendment. Councilmember Morrell, Councilmember Harris seconds it.
Wait. We're voting on the motion right now?
No, we are voting on the
Okay.
amendment, on just the amendment.
Okay.
6 yeas, no nays, and the amendment is approved. Councilmember Green, I see you have a comment.
I just had a comment relative to the general movement forward of this particular motion. I just want to say that it's sometimes tough to put a lot of pressure on private property owners to have their properties brought up to the right codes, to have them to invest significantly in their properties if the city hasn't been doing the correct thing. So I appreciate the hearing that we had at Quality of Life on this issue, but I'll give you a specific example. At the corner of Desire in Florida, there is a particular station that has been cited many times for violations of codes, and the neighbors are very concerned about it. And then right across the street is a vacant and abandoned city property with the grass overgrown and the like. I use that as an example to say why it is important for us to continue to clean and have our house in good order as we continue to put pressure on private citizens. So I look forward to supporting this. I'd like to be identified as a co-author of something that goes in line with what we discussed at Quality of Life, enhancing the quality of life in our city, but making sure that the city is doing the right thing too.
Thank you, Councilmember Green. Madam Clerk, if you can add Councilmember Green as a co-author, please. For public comment, let me bring up Don Abear. I have a card from Don. Is Don still here? No? Okay. Any online public comment? And no online public comment. Great, nice and easy. Okay, I'll make a motion to adopt.
Councilmember Moreno.
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have one from you, Mr. Burnside. Okay, come on up, Mr. Burnside.
Mr.
Wait.
Councilmember,
Oh, Ben, come on, Ben Bagwell, come on up.
Councilmember, are you
Hello.
adding Councilmember Green to both the amendment and the ordinance, or just?
Just the
amendment?
ordinance.
Okay.
Mr. Bagwell, go ahead.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Ben Bagwell. Thank you for having me back. I want to say thank you for acknowledging this problem in our city, first and foremost. I want to also ask for you, before we move on to this issue, which is a bigger issue, to acknowledge the home of our city, which is this building, which we showcase to the world, which is your home where you come to work. So technically, this is like your home, really, and I see it as your home. And one of the council members, associates, actually said, "You know what, Ben? This is your home," as in the residents and the citizens of New Orleans. And for the people who do care about the things that you're talking about in this ordinance of having it clean and secure and presentable type of thing to the public, I think we need to look at our home here. So I'm sure these people have seen the deterioration of this place, this building, which is our vision. This is where we show the world. When tourists come here, when our citizens come here, this place needs to be more welcoming. This place needs to represent the citizens, not the whoever is controlling this place. There's broken windows that have not been fixed. There's algae. You can't even read the sign. The lights aren't on. Do I need to get up there in the middle of the night with a pressure washer and a condor 120 feet to come pressure wash it? Because I will volunteer to do that if that's what it takes. We just need to respect our resources. And that's what this is all about. That's what this is about. We need to respect the citizens who truly hold and are realizing that we have the power in this city, that you are here to work with us, not against us, to make this city what it can be for the world, which what it is known as to the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bagwell. Appreciate your comments. All right, with that, members, let's go ahead and vote. I will make a motion to adopt. Oh, we're already voting. It's been moved and seconded by Councilmember Morel. 7 yeas, no nays. Yay.
Council members, we're now going to go to page 58. We have motion M 22-443 by Council members Moreno, Morel, Jeruso, Harris, King, Green, and Thomas, approving the following disbursements subject to the availability of funds. George Washington Carver High School, $1 million. The Community Development Committee recommended approval.
All right, members, yesterday we had a great community development meeting chaired by Councilmember King on this item. This is the $1 million contribution from the New Orleans City Council to the 9th Ward Stadium so that it can move towards completion of this really important project. The money that we are sending over comes from the Entergy Paid Actors Settlement Fund. So this is money that won't be impacting any type of operations with the city. So no reductions there, but this is a really great investment for all kids in the city of New Orleans. Any comment? Thank you. One comment. Michael Burnside? Okay.
I don't know how to say this politely, so I'll just say it quietly. Maybe they'll take quiet for polite. A lot of buildings are closed. A lot of buildings are locked. A lot of buildings exist. They were built. People got paid money to build them, and we don't use them. Keller Community Center has been locked and closed. I could tell you a horror story about a young black man in my neighborhood who was grew up there with his grandma, went down to work and quit after one day because the city paid contractor had a subcontractor who was paying Hispanics $5 an hour to work on that building. We got a lot of buildings we don't use. We own the old VA hospital, all of it, including the parking lot and everything else. We have a lot of buildings we don't use. And so there's a dream here, you know, there's a dream. The stadium's good. It'll help the kids and we all like that. But here's the deal. A year from now, when I go walking by there, we don't use necessarily the resources we have. We've balkanized ourselves far too much. Somebody else has the key, the lock, we can't open it. And it's a serious problem because a lot of old white men get paid to build the buildings and the young black men don't get to play in them.
Thank you, Mr. Burnside. Councilmember Thomas, followed by Green.
First of all, thank you, Councilmember Moreno, for leading the discussion and actually coming up with a pot of funds that can get this done. We've talked about it in that community for decades. And the difference here, Mr. Burnside, is that this facility can generate its own revenue. And so we're hopeful at some point that that money will go to overall general maintenance and upkeep of the facility. And we know that travel sports and quality facilities right now are one of the biggest economic growing opportunities, especially in urban corridors. And the difference here is people will say, well, you have Nord facilities and you have other stadiums, but many of them aren't multi-purpose. They don't have adequate dressing rooms. They don't have adequate concessions and they don't have adequate parking. So the difference here is this stadium will be a lot more holistic and a lot more comprehensive, and not only with the services it can provide, but the opportunity to generate money and hopefully target that money back to maintenance and upkeep. So thank you, Councilmember Moreno.
Thank you, Councilmember Thomas. Councilmember Green.
I want to thank the council in advance for what I think is going to be a very favorable vote, since we all sponsored this. But it's important to recognize that this is more than just a stadium, that this is also a statement of our commitment to investing in a community that is historic, whose members have contributed so much to our city. The Desire, Florida area, especially the corridor along what is now Johnny Jackson Jr. Boulevard, Carver Middle School, now Thrive NOLA, going to be doing a community center at the corner of Johnny Jackson Jr. in Florida. It's important to recognize this is but one part of the rebuilding of that historic community. And I'm just pleased to be on the council representing District D at this time, where we as a council are making our contributions clear and unequivocal relative to building this facility in this particular community. So I want to thank the members of the council for co-sponsoring this. Thank you, Councilmember Moreno, for identifying this, for putting in place the mechanism that resulted in this money being available through the post-Ida activity that the council took. But this is a very important issue, a very important project, and we're going to use this as a springboard for other development in especially the Desire Florida community. So I'm just pleased to have the opportunity, especially as a representative of District D, to vote to move this forward today.
Thank you, Councilmember Green. I have one more. It looks like Sage Michael. Hey, Sage, come on up.
Councilmember, we also have one online comment.
Okay, thanks, Anita.
Thank you.
Hey.
A lot on the agenda there I'm curious about, but I hear this. I went to Sidney Collier Votech School as a graduate of McMahon in '92, Carver School right there. I'm in full support of this. This is exciting. You put $1 million to our community, our school, and our students. Thank y'all so much. I know Troy Carter did some work along this as well.
Absolutely.
To see the city as a partner, I'm excited. $1 million going to our community. I'm in full support. Thank y'all for everything. I'm excited, y'all.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sage. And I'll say that our legislative delegation also did their part as well and contributed toward this project as well. So one online comment, Anita, go ahead.
Right, from Olin G. Parker. On behalf of the Orleans Parish School Board, he says OPSB is so grateful to the City Council for directing $1 million to the construction of a new stadium in the Ninth Ward. This new facility will provide students in the Ninth Ward and the New Orleans East with facility close to home, and will allow a new generation of students to participate in the type of extracurricular activities that make school memorable. It will also bring needed investment and additional economic activity to a critically important neighborhood in our city. Please know that the Orleans Parish School Board is thankful to the council for its ongoing commitment to the youth of our city and the students of New Orleans Public Schools. We look forward to continuing to partner together to benefit students and families throughout our community.
Thank you, Anita. Appreciate that. One more comment. Okay. It looks like Angela. Oh, Angela, come on up. You scribble. Angela Kettle.
Yes, I think it's more than understood that there's extreme support for anything that will provide some proactive support for our youth and our families. And so because this project is so important and people have been asking for it for so long, I want to also emphasize that right around the corner are the homes of the residents of Gordon Plaza. And so this would be a great time for you, Mr. Green, to announce, because that whole area is yours, right? To be able to say, what is the next step? Because you pull people into the hallway here, and so there's a need for public understanding, because the residents of Gordon Plaza been fighting for this, that, and this for a long time. So these go together, because when the children use the space, how dare they have to look across the street and see people who have not been provided the funds that they need for a relocation. So let's go ahead and make these connections here. And if you don't mind, Mr. Green, this will be a perfect time to follow up on what was just shared in the hallway, because I think that the rest of the members of the council would like to hear as well, and the public would like to hear as well. So we can move the whole community forward and not have contradictions in the room.
Yeah.
I think today we celebrate a great stadium investment of $1 million.
Yes, yes,
I
yes.
certainly would like to vote on that based on the provisions of the resources to our youth. Angela, at the end of this day, within these 2 minutes, I suggested that we have a meeting next week because the administration is not coming down today. But I don't want to dilute this vote today to provide $1 million to the Ninth Ward Stadium at Carver High School. I will be glad to have a meeting Tuesday if we can set the time for the meeting, or on Wednesday, and invite the administration down, and they should come. So at this time, that concludes my comments relative to this. I am open for a meeting, Angela, as I have mentioned at any time. Anytime.
And you also want to mention too that you said in the hallway.
I said that
you
I
did
don't
not
know.
believe that anybody had received offers.
Well,
you said that in the hallway as
let
well.
me use the right wording.
Come on with the
I
wording.
do not have information on
Okay.
anyone who has accepted an offer that has been presented relative to Gordon Plaza buyout.
And also that you didn't think that that really happened. Come on now, transparency.
Well, look, because I don't have any word and nobody has
So
verified
that is
that's
why
the
we
case.
need that
So,
meeting.
Angela, there
So
have
what
been
time
no,
is the meeting going to be?
Angela, there has been no offer to buy out, but please, can we vote on this and then we'll set the
Yeah,
meeting?
we
Let's vote.
listen.
I understand, Angela. We're voting on a
Listen,
stadium
this is
right
where
now,
you've
which
been
is a
fighting
good
for.
news project. It's a great news project. I
Yes.
understand. Then we'll talk about setting the meeting
Okay.
right afterwards.
All
This is
right.
a great news project.
All right, guys.
Congratulations to everyone who made
Okay.
this happen.
Let's go ahead and finish voting here. I've moved, seconded by Councilmember Harris. All in favor, please vote. Who am I missing? I think everybody wants to vote on this. Councilmember Thomas?
Thomas.
Okay, 7 yeas, no nays, Madam Clerk. This machine's not working.
My feet keep getting in the way.
Councilmember,
Got to cut them in half.
can I please finish this page before we
This
go to
page.
number?
Okay.
Sure.
We have motion M22-441 by council members Thomas and Harris by request, declaring that the NOHD healthcare for the homeless dental lab service to be an emergency because it severely affects vulnerable population that is in need of dental care, and authorizing NOHD healthcare for the homeless to secure informal bids for the emergency procurement of up to 3 dental lab bids at a cost not to exceed $107,292.64.
It's actually Councilmember Harris on the lead, and I'm going to follow her lead on that issue. Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Councilmember Thomas. The New Orleans Health Department's Healthcare for the Homeless is seeking a declaration of emergency from the City Council for HCH's dental laboratory services, which includes materials such as patients' dentures. HCH has been providing the homeless, uninsured, and underinsured population with quality dental services in the area since 1988. Despite 2 recent bids in the last 6 months, HCH has been unable to secure dental lab services due to serve this population, thus forcing immediate cessation of procedures. Patients have already been requesting refunds for deposits made since we've seen the services. So it's vital that we move on forward with this motion to allow for emergency procurement. Listen, dental care needs to be included in everyone's care. And this just paves a way to provide our most vulnerable communities with dental care for low or no cost. So I'll move.
Thank you. Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Thomas.
And my machine's still not working. But yay.
Everyone yays for this. Thank you.
Now, council members, we're going to page 29. And we're going to ordinance calendar number 33,745 by council members Harris, Jeruso, and Moreno. An ordinance to amend and reordain sections 146-493, 154-2, 154-1401, 154-1409, 154-1421, and 154-1423, and to ordain sections 154-1751, 154-1752, and 154-1753 of the Code of the City of New Orleans to distinguish bicycles and electric scooters and to provide for prohibitions and regulations relative to electric scooters and otherwise to provide with respect thereto, and there is an amendment. It's by Councilmember Harris. On page 1, line 10, after the word of and before the word or, delete safety and permits and insert the Department of Public Works in lieu thereof. Number 2, on page 4, line 11, remove the text after the word that and remove all text in lines 12 through 14 and insert the following text. I, registered and annually renews their occupational license with the Department of Finance, Bureau of Revenue. Number 1, I'm sorry. Number 2, maintains a physical office location for which the electric scooter is retrieved at the commencement of any rental and to which the electric scooter is returned to the same physical location at the conclusion of the rental. Number 3, stores the electric scooters inside the physical office location at all times. The electric scooters are not rented. Number 3, on page 5, line 24, after the word to and before the word thereafter, delete $100 per day and insert $250 per scooter for an initial violation and $500 for each subsequent violation in lieu thereof. That is the amendment.
Madam Clerk, should we take up the amendment first? Yes, all right, I'll move to amend. Seconded by Councilmember Jeruso.
Yay for me too. How do I get the machine back up?
7 for the amendment, and if I can just make some comment on the ordinance as amended. We discussed this ordinance last week at transportation, so many of you are already familiar with what we're talking about. This legislation is meant to facilitate enforcement of the city's existing scooter ordinance and to ensure that we are not threatening our city bike share program, Blue Bikes. Under our current law, city code already classifies unused scooters as right-of-way obstructions subject to city removal and store and rent scooters through apps. To address that issue, today's ordinance clarifies that no scooter rentals are permitted except from a brick and mortar scooter rental facility. That's hard to say. The other reason why we've got to move forward on this is because of Blue Bikes, as I mentioned. The city CEA governing Blue Bikes specifies that Blue Crew, the nonprofit managing the program, has the right of first refusal on any shared micromobility options, which includes e-scooters. The whole reason is to protect our residents and local businesses from big transit companies overtaking the transit system for their profit. Allowing app-based scooter companies threatens to violate the CEA, which means the city can be sued, and our entire Blue Bikes program, which no one wants. I do want to recognize that one small business came before us during the Transportation Committee, Mr. D'Angelo Fleming, and we've connected Mr. Fleming to the city's economic development office and Propeller to try to help him transition into a brick and mortar operation so that his scooter company can stay afloat. So we are really working with Mr. Fleming to try to get him a brick and mortar outlet so that he is not in violation of the current CEA and rules. On this amendment, we worked with the administration to just tighten up some of the language. And we have the city here, I think, for context in case they want to say anything. Y'all have anything to say? Oh, the city is not here. Okay, got it. This amendment does a few things. It clarifies that DPW is the department enforcing the ordinance rather than safety and permits. It also specifies that scooters need to be returned to the same store from which they have been rented and that the scooter must be stored inside between rentals. Finally, the amendment adjusts the fines from $100 a day per violation system that charges $250 per scooter for the first violation and $500 for subsequent violations. I know we have 2 public comments that we'll take right now, and then we'll go to any council members. The first, Aaron Holmes. She just said. Good afternoon, council members. My name is Erin Holmes, representing VC Pora. I've already spoken at several of the Transportation Committee meetings, so I just want to show up today to continue voicing our support for the ordinance. We appreciate the additional amendments as well. Our support for this ordinance comes out of concern for public safety. We know that the city already prohibited the scooters in 2018. 4 years later, we still do not have the capacity for enforcement and emergency services. In fact, even less so now. And we started seeing them pop up around the downtown neighborhoods. I think that the importance of the amendment and the ordinance is that it restricts the rental of scooters to physical rental shops and that they have to be picked up and returned to the exact same location, which is going to not let the rental of scooters scale up the way they have in other cities like Austin, New York, a lot of cities in California, to the scale of thousands and thousands that are clogging the sidewalks and sending riders and pedestrians to the emergency room. So while other cities are scrambling to kind of put the genie back in the bottle, I want to thank our council for recognizing that right now is not the time for the city of New Orleans and an e-scooter system. So I appreciate your work on this. And I also want to say thank you for reaching out to Mr. Fleming and to come into compliance. Thank you. Thank you. Alan Johnson.
Hello, my name is Alan Johnson. I live at 1418 Charters. I'm the president of Faubourg Merit Improvement Association. I just wanted to say that we are opposed to the e-scooters. We have legitimate health and safety concerns. However, I applaud the work that the council did on this, trying to bring the business into compliance, trying to allow the scooter to exist, but doing it in the most safe way by having a brick and mortar locations. We don't have the infrastructure to have these app-based scooters spread all over the street and the sidewalks. What y'all tried to do is, I think, a very good compromise, and I applaud the conscientious work y'all put in. I thank you very much for that. Still concerned about the safety aspect, but I think y'all have done a good job of trying to find a way to make this work. So thank you.
Thank you. Nikki Slazwinski. Savensky, thank you.
Nikki Savinsky, French Quarter Citizens, 1011 St. Philip. This is, a toughie. I think a lot of us don't want to see e-scooters for everything that Alan just said, as well as the public health person from last week. It's a great start. I hope that we can do more to regulate scooters and how the operators operate them. That's what I would like to see in the future. I think a lot of people feel like we're constantly being run down by not just scooters, but bicycles as well. And while it's a great, green alternative, it needs regulation. And I hope that this is a first step. We look forward to trying to make this work. And thank you for your work on this. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Clevenger.
Good afternoon, council. I would just like to say Morgan Clevenger, 1653 North Broad, 7th Ward, Fairgrounds Triangle. We have a real challenge with the blue bikes. They're constantly being locked up in front of people's houses, in their driveways, in their yards, on utility poles, on street signs. And there is no way, there's no phone number to call to get them removed. You have to send an email with all your personal information to some unknown entity, and they never get back to you. And you just hope that they come and get them. And sometimes it takes weeks, months to get these things. Now, the other thing we've seen a lot of is the blue bikes getting stolen. We have a couple of houses in our area that have piles of them in their backyards. And we don't know how they get them, but the system is being abused. So I would say, as far as regulatory stuff, I'm always in support of small business, and I hope that we can continue to see no one entity have a monopoly. But if we're going to say safety and compliance, we need the blue bike system to work as well. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Clevenger. Are there any comments from the guys?
We have some online comments.
Yes, I do. I do have a comment though, and I guess it's for Ms. Clevenger. Who comes to pick up those bikes eventually? Our answer is an anonymous white van. It's my understanding that as part of the CEA, the entity that is renting those bikes has a responsibility to come back and pick them up. I actually was under the impression that it was done on a public level, but I guess I want to look into that a little bit more. I don't have a conclusion, but it doesn't seem like an orderly process if you're telling me that you're seeing blue bikes in your neighborhoods in significant numbers. I appreciate your comments. It brings up an issue that we discussed, that we want to have it done right and efficiently, and we want to have everybody be good actors in this regard. I'm not surprised at what you've heard, but I'm surprised that it stays so long. That's all. Maybe at one of our future council meetings, if not this, then a committee meeting, we could ask representatives of the blue bikes to come by and explain what they're doing to make sure that the bikes don't stay out for so long.
Thank you, Councilmember Green. Anita?
First comment is from Alan Harden. Please accept this letter on behalf of the Garden District Association Board of Directors and membership in opposition to allow electric scooters in the city of New Orleans. We are opposed to allowing electric scooters for the following reasons. One, electric scooters are on the streets of New Orleans will exacerbate unsafe conditions and conflicts between drivers of motor vehicles and bicycles. Two, there are no regulatory measures to require safety equipment such as helmets and or lights. Further, there are no limitations on the hours of use on public rights of way. Three, there are no prohibitions to electric scooter riders utilizing sidewalks, thus creating unsafe conditions for pedestrians. Four, with regard to number three above, Magazine Street, which is lined with restaurants, some with sidewalk dining, boutiques, art galleries, etc., would have to compete for space. Five, even if scooters are prohibited from sidewalks, Magazine Street, as an example, is a narrow 2-lane crosstown bus route that is congested. Electric scooters will create a dangerous situation. Six, the condition of our infrastructure, streets and sidewalks throughout the city creates a dangerous environment for scooters. Seven, lastly, the city does not have a sufficient number of enforcement personnel to manage electric scooters to prohibit them from being deposited on sidewalks, entrances to businesses, etc. In short, the city of New Orleans should prohibit electric scooters. We appreciate the opportunity to provide our input.
Anita, I'm going to interrupt you and ask you how many more comments we have on this. Just one more? Okay,
Yep.
perfect.
Mary Mizingabala comments, I'm opposed to e-scooters as they are extremely dangerous to riders and surrounding people. However, if you insist on allowing them, I support this ordinance as it will allow some regulation of numbers and having them litter the sidewalks.
Great, thank you. I'm going to move as amended. Can I get a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Thomas. Yep. Thanks. Councilmember Thomas can second.
Yeah.
You got it. All in favor?
Yay.
All right.
All right, thank you.
At the top of this page, ordinance calendar number 33,671 has been deferred to November the 3rd. At the bottom of the page, ordinance calendar number 33,847 by Councilmember King. An ordinance to amend ordinance number 28,862 MCS as amended to adjust budgets for the New Orleans Police Department, Department of Public Works, Chief Administrative Office, and the Department of Public Safety in the French Quarter Economic Development District Trust Fund, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
Madam Clerk, can we add 18 this as well?
You want me to read it now, or I'll do it after?
After this? Okay.
Yes. Just do this one and I'll go to the next one.
All right. Well, Madam Clerk gave us a synopsis of the ordinance. Are there any public comments?
Any public comment? No. No public comment.
That's Councilman Morrell.
Thank you. I think we'd be remiss before we vote on these documents if we don't comment on a video that was circulated by Macno. Like, I'm sure they're going to speak on this earlier this week, where there was an individual who seemed to intimate to street performers that they would use increased camera footage to surveil them and prosecute them for, being musicians and culture bearers. And I want to be very clear and express as a member of this council, our intent, if we choose to put cameras in the quarter, is not to surveil culture bearers and musicians who are being musicians and culture bearers. It is to provide additional resources to NOPD to promote public safety. And I would be very hard pressed to explain to any culture bearer why harassing someone because NOPD and FQMD will not put up the barricades properly is somehow a crime. So I want to make sure I put that on the record. That is not the council's intent. And I'll be even more candid. If I ever get a report that these cameras are being used to harass street performers, I'll be the first one to shut them down. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, Councilmember Morrell. I second that. This is not to harass or intimidate anybody. It's strictly for safety, public safety in the French Quarter. So at this time I make a motion to adopt. Second by Councilmember Morrell, please vote.
Yay.
7 yeas, no nays.
Microphone works, the machine broken.
Yay.
Now we'll go to the top of page 34, ordinance calendar number 33,864 by Councilmember King. An ordinance to amend ordinance number 28,863 MCS as amended, entitled an ordinance providing an operating budget of expenditures for the city of New Orleans for the year 2022 to appropriate special revenue from intergovernmental transfers to the Department of Public Works, Department of Police, NOPD, Office of the Mayor, and Chief Administrative Office to provide for additional lighting in the French Quarter through the Department of Public Works, equipped and training for the French Quarter Supplemental Police Patrol Program through NOPD, purchase and installations of additional security cameras to be connected to the real-time crime center within the French Quarter, and homeless assistance, caseworkers, equipment, and other related items, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We do have 3 public comments. Do we have any online comments? Okay. First, we'll have them in this order. Ms. Ethan Elstad, Bob Morrell, and Marvin Arnold. Please come in that order. Thank you.
Hey, good afternoon, Council. Ethan Ellisted, Executive Director of Macno Music and Culture Coalition of New Orleans, 1307 Everything is a Haley. You already mentioned the video, which I appreciate.
Speak a little bit louder.
Yeah, sorry. Can you hear me? All right. I'm gonna try. So my voice is a little bit, it's been a minute. So I wanted to say a couple things about this, the cameras, and about this ordinance in particular, and how sort of the budget allocation. One, the video that we had, it really expresses one of our concerns that we have about the way that cameras and surveillance can be used to suppress cultural activity, whether or not whether or not is the policy, the fact that the constable looked at the cameras and said, NOPD told us that we will cite if you continue to do this, whether or not that's a policy, the fact that one of the many different law enforcement agencies can do the same thing, no matter what it is a concern. The fact that they become an issue, whether, again, whether or not they're actually used, the fact that it's being used as a threat is the issue, right? So making sure that doesn't continue to happen. And then also just the way this budget allocation happened, right? One thing that happened earlier today, we saw Ubuntu Village come out and talk about the way that public safety can be addressed in many different ways. This budget allocation really just spends almost all of its time, well, a little over 50% on increased surveillance, on these reactive measures, rather than really investing into these proactive policies and programs. And so really flipping that dynamic. And I think the last thing I will say is part of that's also who's at the table when these decisions are being made. One of the things I talk about the FQMD a lot is the fact that it's not a fully representative body, right? There are not performers there. There are not sort of service industry workers. They're not the people that are going to be the impacts of these surveillance, all these policies are not at the decision-making table. And so when you have these things that are being put out there, they need to be these actual voices at the table when it's being crafted instead of hearing on the back end. I know that there were public meetings that people could attend to make comments on it. But if you look at those public meetings, there are virtually zero public comments in all those. And it's partly, I think, by the way that this particular piece was advertised, which I had to write down, generally was instead of a discussion of public, I know my time's up, and public safety in French Quarter was discussion by the committee of the French Quarter Economic Development District fiscal year 2022 mid-year budget adjustments. And so if you're worried about public safety in the French Quarter, that's not going to bring you out. Whereas if you're talking about how do we allocate this out for public safety, you'll actually get some of the public participation you're looking for. Thank you.
Thank you. Next commenter. Bob Morrell. All right, then we have Marvin Arnold. Marvin Arnold. For the record, Mr. Bob Morrell and Mr. Marvin Arnold opposed the ordinance. No, any other comments? Mr. Sage Michael, info only.
Yeah, I just thank you for that this moment. I just really find it really peculiar that the French Quarter is like some special place of the city to receive special privileges and special support. We have this whole city of New Orleans that need lights. The whole city of New Orleans needs supplemental police forces. And when you all craft out this special privilege for the French Quarter, you all are telling us that we don't matter on the other end of the city. So I really don't like this cherry picking, this section off one side of the city to receive all the pilot programs, all the funding. I mean, New Orleans East is a part of New Orleans. We don't see it on any tourism advertising, but we see the French Quarter, which is the dirtiest city, dirtiest street in New Orleans. And so when you all create this type of legislation that specifies special revenues, when you're making that special, we're special in New Orleans East. We're special at Garden Plaza. We're special all over the city. So will you please stop crafting out this section that been caused so much extraction across our city? We need it across the city, not just this little French Quarter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Michael. Yeah, any other comments off the dais? Public comments, online comments? I make a motion to move. I move. Any seconds? Second by Councilmember Green. Please vote your machine.
Aye.
7 yeas, no nays. Thank you.
At the bottom of the page, ordinance calendar number 33,866 has been deferred to 10/20. We're now going to go to the regular order of the agenda on page 22. We have a legislative grouping, a HDLC appeal of Avery Foray, owners representative Sherry Connolly, owner, requested to appeal the Historic District Landmarks Commission's decision of denial of the retention application of unpainted lavore shutters on a designated landmark, two-story, single-family residential building located at 1237 State Street. We have motion M22-433 by Councilmember Jeruso, granting the applicant's request for the property located at 1237 State Street.
Ms. Burke, thank you for your patience with us today. Will you please give your report?
One moment. 1237 State Street, designed by architect Allison Owen of Diebel and Owen, was constructed in 1902 as his own residence. The building became an HDLC designated landmark on December 10th, 1988, due to its architectural significance in association with the career of a prominent architect. The applicant originally applied for 2 separate certificates of appropriateness for rear yard improvements and to replace the lanterns on the front porch. The shutters that are now in question were not included in the scope of work. In April of 22, the staff found that the existing wood shutters had been removed, repaired, sanded, and reinstalled unpainted in deviation of the issued certificate of appropriateness. The shutters were previously painted green. The HDLC design guidelines, endorsed and adopted by the City Council, require that all exterior woodwork, including shutters, must be painted with opaque paint. Wood grain or semi-transparent stain should be limited to exterior front doors if appropriate for the style. It should be noted that the HDLC does not have jurisdiction over paint color, only whether or not an architectural feature should be painted. Historically, painting was a way of preserving wood features and is still used today as maintenance of historic wood elements. As this is a landmark building that historically would have had opaque painted shutters, and that unpainted shutters are not compatible with the original character of the building, and because it's against the HDLC guidelines, staff recommended denial of the application. While many of the neighbors feel that the shutters look great and find them attractive, the HDLC is not debating a matter of taste, but one of architectural appropriateness. Historically, wood architectural features exposed to the elements were painted with opaque paint in order to protect the wood. The shutters, as currently installed, will rapidly deteriorate due to this lack of protection. While unpainted wood finishes are currently quite trendy on HGTV and aesthetically appealing to some, they are not appropriate for a historic New Orleans significant rated high style 1902 colonial revival style residence, individually designated for its architectural significance. At their meeting of September 7th, 2022, the commissioners reviewed the staff report, owner testimony, public comment, and staff recommendations. Stephanie Bruno made a motion to allow the retention of the shutters for a period of 2 years, after which they would be required to be painted. The motion, seconded by Ann Red, failed to pass. A second motion by Jennifer Green to deny the retention of the shutters passed 8-1.
Thank you. Ms. Foray, are you still here? I saw her here earlier. All right, she left. She was going to speak in favor of this. I'm going to move to grant the applicant's request for the property at 1237 State Street as stated in M22433. Seconded by Councilmember Harris. Members, please vote your machines. Yep, 6 yeas, no nays. Thank you.
7 yeas.
7, nope, 7, all 7, all 7. Thank you.
We're now on top of page 24, a legislative grouping, zoning docket number 6122, Tijana and Patel Investments LLC, requesting a conditional use to permit the retail sale of packaged alcoholic beverages in a C2 auto-oriented commercial district located on square LHC Lot A in the 3rd Municipal District, bounded by Elysian Fields Avenue, Interstate 10, and Florida Avenue. Municipal addresses 2401 through 2411 Elysian Fields. The recommendation of the City Planning Commission being for approval, subject to 2 provisos. We have motion M22442 by Councilmember Green, granting the applicant's conditional use request, subject to 2 provisos as stated in the City Planning Commission on zoning docket 6122.
Fellow council members, this is a request for a conditional use to permit the retail sale of packaged alcoholic beverages at 2401-11 Elysian Fields Avenue. It includes a non-conforming truck stop, which is why it's before us today, which includes a convenience store, fueling, and gaming hall. The applicant is proposing to add the retail sale of packaged alcoholic beverage for off-site consumption, which requires a conditional use as the site is located in a C2 auto-oriented district. We have a representative, Mr. Stephen Kroll of the City Planning Commission, to tell you why the City Planning Commission reached its decision.
Thank you, council member. Yeah, this is an application for a non-conforming truck stop, Mardi Gras truck stop on Franklin, or excuse me, on Elysian Fields between Florida and I-10. They simply want to have the sale of packaged alcoholic beverages within the facility's convenience store. The Planning Commission in general is supportive of, the sale of alcoholic beverages alongside other food and beverage products, and that's especially the case for higher intensity commercial zoning districts such as this C2 district. And finding that, this to be appropriate for the truck stop site and the zoning district, the Planning Commission does recommend approval.
I have two cards. If these members are present or these citizens are present and would like to come forward, Frisia Galvez of Zach Smith Consulting. 2 minutes, Ms. Galvez.
How y'all doing? Good evening. I want to start off by thanking the council members for your time. Thank you for having me. I wanted to say thank you for realizing, the alcohol issue is a little iffy, but we are reestablishing this conditional use because they once did have the ability to sell alcohol. So I appreciate the staff report and thank you for making the process very easy and everybody being so knowledgeable the whole process.
Thank you. Just manage it well.
Thank you.
Zach Smith. Zach Smith, we have no further comments. Are there any online comments? I move for approval of the conditional use permit. It is subject to the two provisos as recommended by the City Planning Commission. My motion, is there a second? Seconded by Council Vice President Morrell. Members, please vote your machines. I'll assume 7 yeas, because I can't, 7 yeas, no nays. Thank you very much for your support. Yep, good.
We're now on top of page 25. We have a legislative grouping, zoning docket 6222 NKY Inc. requesting a conditional use to permit an established multifamily dwelling in an HURD2 district located on square 753, lot 14 and 15 in the first municipal district bounded by South Scott Street, South Pierce Street, and Palmyra Street. Municipal addresses 3915 through 3917 Bank Street. The recommendation of the City Planning Commission being for approval, subject to 4 provisos. We have motion M22-434 by Councilmember Jeruso, granted the applicant's conditional use request, subject to 4 proviso as set forth by the City Planning Commission on zoning docket 6222, with the addition of 2 provisos. Number 5, the developer shall submit a litter abatement plan. Number 6, the developer shall erect a 10-foot fence along the rear property line. That is the motion.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Kroll.
Thank you, council member. This is an application affecting an existing building on Banks near South Carrollton and neighboring Mona's Cafe. It's zoned HURD2, which is a residential district that generally allows singles and doubles, but does allow existing multifamily up to 4 units. This particular structure historically had 8 units, and the proposal is to renovate it for future use as a 6-unit building because that's above that 4-unit threshold, and because buildings over that scale can have larger land use impacts in terms of traffic activity and just general occupancy. Those are brought through the the conditional use process to allow for public consideration of the proposal. In this case, the inclusion of a new 6-unit building within the neighborhood helps fill out the neighborhood housing stock, provides opportunities for more affordable units, smaller units than may be available elsewhere. And so the Planning Commission is supportive of it further because it's less dense than it was historically. There's no introduction of new land use impacts that would have not been experienced historically. And so having said that, the Planning Commission is in support and recommends approval of those provisos.
Thank you, Mr. Kroll. Francia Galvez, are you here? Thank you. And then Zach Smith.
How you doing again? This by far been one of the best projects I've worked on so far. I can't stress, nobody can stress enough in this room how badly we need housing in New Orleans, and taking this building that's been so underutilized since Katrina and turning it into a 6-unit multifamily dwelling is great. I want to thank Claire. I don't know if Claire's still in here. Yeah, thank you a lot, Claire. She's been helping me out with her provisos, and your whole staff, pretty much a council member. And it's been great, and I can't wait. Oh, I want to thank the neighbors as well. The neighbors, with those provisos, everybody's happy. You know, city, our company, neighbors. And yeah, I really appreciate everything. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Smith, do you want to speak? No, you're good. All right. Thank you. I also think it takes everybody to get to a point where CPC, council, neighbors, applicant, and their team are happy. So it requires everybody working together. And I appreciate how everybody did that. I just want to stress a few notable provisos. We added no STRs will be permitted here. There will be a litter abatement plan to help keep the area clean, and the developer will install a 10-foot fence at the rear of the property for privacy. Also, as Mr. Kroll noted, but I'd like to stress, particularly in light of the IZD, the property could have come back as 4 units under the established multifamily amendment, but actually this will be 6 units, and it does cater and follow more closely what happens in the mid-city neighborhood. So with that, I will move to approve M22434, those 6 provisos, seconded by Councilmember Harris. 7 yeas. Councilmember Thomas, you want to give me a yay? No, I mean in the microphone.
Yay.
Thank you, sir.
We're now on top of page 26. We have a legislative grouping, zoning docket 6522, Worthmore Realty LLC, requesting for a conditional use to permit a standard restaurant in an HUB1 historic urban neighborhood business district, CPC Character Preservation Corridor Design Overlay District, the Magazine Street Use Restriction Overlay District, and small multi-family affordable short-term rental interim zoning district located on square 145, lot 8 or 22 in the first municipal district, bounded by Magazine Street, Louisiana Avenue, Camp Street, and Toledano Street. Municipal address 1526 Magazine Street. The recommendation of the City Planning Commission being for approval, subject to 4 provisos. We have motion M22-427 by Councilmember Harris, granting the applicant's conditional use request, subject to 4 provisos as set forth by the City Planning Commission on zoning number 6522.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This motion will approve a request for conditional use to permit a standard restaurant in the Magazine Street Use Restriction Overlay District. Stephen, will you brief us on the CPC report?
Sure. Thank you, council member. So this affects a former retail space on Magazine near Race Street. About a 2,100 square foot restaurant called Shelby's is slated to occupy it. In this particular overlay, as you know, restaurants are regulated through the conditional use process, and it's based off of recognition that Magazine has a denser concentration of restaurants and other nighttime destinations than do most other commercial corridors in the city. I would say that this particular part of Magazine near Race, across from St. Vincent's Hotel, is a relatively underpopulated stretch of Magazine. And so the addition of a restaurant to those other nearby commercial uses is really for the benefit of the corridor. No opposition expressed to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission in general is supportive of these applications. And so it's an approval recommendation from the Planning Commission with standard provisos.
Thank you. And I know we have Lydia Castro here.
Yep, this is me. I am the project director for the group. It's a hospitality group that has been in New Orleans for years now. They've owned Restaurant Coquette for 15 years, and now we own Lengua Madre for 2 years now. All the neighbors are happy with us. We usually try to, harbor a very healthy relationships with all of our neighbors in both restaurants. And so far, we've never had an issue with anyone. And now with Shelby's, I go out, I talk to the neighbors, I make sure everyone feels okay about the restaurants and everyone is up for it.
Great, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and move. Seconded by Council President Moreno. All in favor? Seven yeas, motion passes. Thank you.
Good to see you, Chef. The sister.
We're now on top of page 27, Legislative Group and Zoning Docket 6722, 9000 Chef Mature Plaza LLC. Requesting a conditional use to permit the retail sale of packaged alcoholic beverages in a BIP Business Import Industrial Park District and the Eastern New Orleans Renaissance Corridor Use Restriction Overlay District, located on lots B and C on an undesignated square in the 3rd Municipal District, bounded by Chef Mature Highway, Old Gentilly Road, and Reed Boulevard. Municipal address, 9000 Chef Mature Highway. The recommendation of the City Planning Commission being for approval, subject to 2 provisos. We have motion M22-445 by Councilmember Thomas, granting the applicants 2 provisos as stated in the City Planning Commission on zoning docket 6722.
Madam Chair, City Planning Commission recommended approval. There was no opposition in the neighborhood meeting, and there was no City Planning Commission hearing. Anything City Planning wants to add to this before we move?
No, you've really got it. It's a pretty straightforward application, adding alcohol sales to an existing grocery store on Chef Mentor Highway. Planning Commission is in support and recommends approval.
Move adoption.
I'll second if I can get it in. You press it. You move.
Moved
Second.
by me, second by Councilmember Green. Vote your machines. Madam Clerk? Move adoption. 7 yeas, no nays. Zoning docket is approved.
We're now on top of page 28, a legislative grouping, zoning docket 6822, MELP and MAG LLC, requesting a conditional use to permit a development containing commercial units between 5,000 and 10,000 square feet in floor area in an HUMU Historic Urban Neighborhood Mixed Use District and
Commercial
CPC Character Preservation Corridor Design Overlay District, located on Square 154, Lot 1A in the 1st Municipal District, bounded by Magazine Street, Melpomene Street, Camp Street, and Thalia Street. Municipal addresses 1323 through 1339 Magazine Street and 1119 Melpomene Street. The recommendation of the City Planning Commission being for approval, subject to 1 waiver and 12 provisos. We have motion M22-428 by Councilmember Harris, granting the applicant's conditional use request, subject to 1 waiver and 12 provisos as set forth in the City Planning Commission on zoning docket 7968.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This motion will approve a request for conditional use to permit a commercial development with units between 5,000 and 10,000 square feet. This was previously approved, but the owners ran out of time to complete the conditional use process and they needed additional flexibility for the size of each unit. Stephen?
Thank you, Council Member. I'll just add that this is affecting a property on Magazine and Melpomene that's really underdeveloped at this point. And the new structure will be 3 stories, retail space on the ground floor, upper office space, which is sort of designed to flex to meet the size needs of the tenants, which is why having that range between 5,000 and 10,000 is important. I think also notable is that the developer is actually proposing to oversupply parking. So, as we know, Magazine can be very congested. And so in order to accommodate that, they're providing actually more parking than is usually allowed. And so there's a waiver request as part of that. But, this is really going to be good for filling in that hole in the Magazine Street corridor and reactivating the space.
Thank you. Mr. Burnside. And I apologize for skipping your earlier comment card.
So when I was walking up here, somebody said they were so sick of Mr. Burnside. It's interesting that they're here today. They're not usually here when Mr. Burnside does always talking. And now they're proud of me. So the deal is white man. Okay. So my architect was across the street from this property. And I sent an email to your land use person. I think that we as a group of people need to start encouraging the people who are in fact building the bones and fabric of our city to include residential in their assumptions when they start a development. Instead of necessarily looking to themselves and the maximizing of their personal profit, they need to wonder, what are they really profiting from? And of course, some of the answers, culture bearers, some of the answers are history. There are different answers. But rarely is the answer a brand new building. So if a person has come in to build a brand new building, I believe that they should include some residential components, particularly when the building is going to be about 50,000 square feet and 3 stories tall on one of our more historic pieces of land that at one time included about 11 residential structures. Thank you.
Thank you. Council members, I'm going to move. Seconded by Councilmember Jeruso. Five yeas, motion passes.
It's 6.
Madam Clerk, before we go on, real quick, to the folks at Gordon Plaza, I didn't know you were waiting for an announcement, but it's at, we're gonna have a task force meeting 1 o'clock on the 12th, which is Wednesday. It'll be right here in council chambers, okay? What I requested, and you, Ms. Amar, if you check your email, you see your emails along with Ms. Godshaw, is that I would like to have Mr. Thorns here. I would like to have Cassius Peeler here, obviously representatives from the city attorney's office, because I feel like they're the ones who can provide us more information as far as like the methodology goes. Ms. Amar has a copy already. Oh, no. Oh, they have not agreed. I just sent it out. I just sent it out. I can't hear what he said. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Good.
Got it. Perfect. Perfect. Yeah. Ms. Rainey, let me make sure I have your email and then I'll send it. I've always used Ms. Amar as like the main communicator. I'll send it to you too. You got it. Sounds good. We'll follow up with them. My office will follow up with them. Before the 12th. Yes, ma'am. We'll follow up with them. Can't hear. It's a task force meeting. And so the ones who are usually here are myself, Councilmember Green, Councilmember Thomas, but yes, all are invited. Okay. All right. Thank you all.
I will absolutely be here. I'm willing to meet whenever you wish to meet. I've made that clear. I'll come to the community to meet, as I've done. I know.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you, Councilmember Green. Next item, Madam Clerk. Oh, you know what, Madam Clerk? We need to take one of Councilmember Thomas's items up. I think it's item number 50, page 55.
I think Mr. Akers is here for the Sewage and Water Board bond sale.
What item is that, Councilmember Thomas, for the clerk?
That's on the bottom of page 54. And at some point, I'm gonna have to go pick
And
up my
it's item 55,
my
Madam
son
Clerk.
from school. I'm the only one when my wife's at work who can pick him up. The bottom of page 55, please. Yeah, I mean 54.
We have Resolution R 22-430 by Council Members Thomas and Jeruso by request. A resolution approving the issuance of not exceeding $45 million of drainage system limited tax bonds of the city of New Orleans, Louisiana.
This is for the to sale of municipal bonds for the sewage and water board drainage system. Unless someone has any questions, he presented at one of our committee meetings. We can get this out of the way and move adoption. Move adoption. Second by Councilmember Jeruso. All in favor? 6 yeas, no nays. 7 yeas, should be 7. 7 years, no nays, and it passed. Done. It's done. Man, you got off easy, man. Well, I got to pick up about 5:30. I have to be there to pick my son up, but you have to come back. Only one of his parents can sign him out.
On page 39, ordinance calendar number 33,877 by Councilmember Moreno. An ordinance to amend and reordain sections 30-70, 30-651, and 30-691, 150-955, and 150-969. And ordain Division 5.4 of Article 2 and Chapter 110, sections 110 through 218, 110 through 219, 110 through 220, 110 through 221, and 110 through 222 to create a food pop-up licensing and permitting program and otherwise to provide with respect thereto, zoning docket 5222.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. As you all remember, we've done all this work on the food pop-ups. We had the previous items from the City Planning Commission, and now we need to put all of the different provisions to go into the city code. So this is what that does. I do have a public comment. Bob Morrell.
And great work on
Not
this
here.
too, in answer to a problem that folk have been complaining about.
Well, and I appreciate the council's diligence and patience moving forward with this.
We also
Right.
have one online comment.
One online comment. Go ahead, Anita.
This is from Eliza Munoz. She says, "Thank you, Councilmember Moreno and staff for your continued hard work ensuring equitable licensing and permitting for small food businesses in New Orleans. These streamlined fees and permits will make it easier for cooks and chefs to start and grow a thriving food business in New Orleans, something we pride ourselves on in this great city. We look forward to continued work toward an equitable New Orleans where everyone can cook and eat what they love and make a living doing so." That's, she submits it on behalf of the New Orleans Food Policy Action Council.
Thank you, Anita. Appreciate it. With that, I'll make a motion to adopt. Seconded by Councilmember Green. Seven yeas, no nays. Morgan, come on up quick. I thought it was for a different item. Come on.
Well, I just want to say thank you because for so long, we hear things from the city like, let's crack down on illegal vendors. Let's crack down on street vendors. But New Orleans has a 300-year history of street vendors and food-oriented businesses. And often it's at a survival subsistence level. And after 3 years, 2 years of the pandemic in Ida, we've seen so many small businesses close. So it's so important to have a hand up. And this is very much appreciated because we're supporting really basic people that need ways to move into a compliance arena without being criminalized or penalized. So we thank you very much.
At the top of the page, we have ordinance calendar number 33,876 by Councilmember King. An ordinance to temporarily waive certain fees, permit fees, and requirements within and around the Treme Recreation Community Center located at 1400 St. Philip Street, New Orleans, Louisiana, in conjunction with the Albert Woodfox Homegoing Tribute Memorial event on Saturday, October 8, 2022, from 8:30 to 1:30 to specify the duration and boundaries of said waiver and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Michael Burnside.
Hey, Councilman King, how you doing today?
Doing fine.
Oh, you are a politician. I would not be doing fine if I were sitting up with that daisy, which is one reason I'm not a politician. So, fee waivers, 100% instead of 50. Seems to be a habit that's hard to break. People look at other people, and when they see their neighbor getting something, they get greedy. They want it for themselves. And they may not like their neighbor. And so they're like, well, why did he get it and I didn't get it? So it would be very helpful if the city decided that if it is going to give 100% fee waivers, that there be some sort of, dare I say the word out loud in public, transparency. You know, you can put it up on a website saying we gave this group, that great group, 100% fee waiver, and here's how you apply for 100% fee waiver, and we'd be happy if you did, and it's open to everybody and all this kind of stuff. Because right now it's just a group of good people getting a little help from the city, and since lots of us are not good people, we don't get so much help.
Thank you, Mr. Burnside. I make a motion. I move. Make a motion to move, seconded by Councilmember Harris. All in favor? Aye. 7 yeas, no nays. 6 yeas, seven. Thank you.
We're now going to go to page 30, a legislative grouping, ordinance calendar number 33,857 by Councilmember Thomas, Green, and King. An ordinance to amend and reordain section 66-282 and 66-283 of the Code of the City of New Orleans to increase penalties for littering and dumping, to establish a reward for littering and increase the amount of the reward for littering and dumping, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. We have an amendment. We have two amendments. This is the first one. We have an amendment by Councilmember Thomas. Number one, on page 1, in section 1, insert stars between lines 1 and 2. Number 2, on page 1, in the section 1, insert the stars again on the line following line 21. Number 3, on page 2, in section 2, line 4, after the words "the director of," delete the health department and insert code enforcement in lieu thereof. On page 2, in section 2, lines 8 through 9, after the words "and shall be paid out of," delete environmental improvement fund revolving fund and insert New Orleans Neighborhood Revitalization Fund in lieu thereof. Number 5, on page 2, in section 2, line 9, after the words "defined in section," delete 70-391 and insert 70-415.265-70-415.267 in lieu thereof. On number 6, on page 3, in section 2, insert the 3 stars again between lines 14 and 15. Number 7, on page 3, in section 2, delete line 15 in its entirety and insert the following in lieu thereof. 3, any monies awarded pursuant to this section hereunder shall not be paid unless a citation is issued and 30 days have passed. That is the first amendment.
There's another one. Here's another one.
First of all, thank you, Ismet. I want to thank probably every district council member who's ever served in dealing with this issue. I want to thank Adam Swensey, and I want to thank Dominique Lang as well as the other attorneys on the staff who worked on this. When Councilmember King, Green and I first started talking about this, it was right after we took office. And actually the impetus and the inspiration came from Councilmember Harris's committee. How do we begin to deal with fines, implement rewards, and actually identify the appropriate agency to deal with section 66, 282 of the city charter, with something that has plagued this city for a long time, and that is illegal dumping and littering and specific materials. So we think the reward portion of it is in line with what we can do legally based on our attorney, as well as the staffs, our attorney staffs. We think the fines are also in line with what we can do legally. And with that, I think Councilmember Green has an amendment. Councilmember Green.
I have an amendment. I guess you have to read it.
We reluctantly issue this amendment because we couldn't find provisions in the law to allow it. But hopefully at some point we can take a look at that and maybe do something more creative in the future, especially as it relates to impounding vehicles that are part of trash in our city. Madam Clerk.
Okay, so I'm about to read this one into the record, but we do have to vote on yours first.
I'll vote.
I'll move adoption.
Okay.
Second.
Moved second by Councilmember Green. All in favor? 7 yeas, no nays. Councilmember Green.
His amendment reads as follows. On page 1, line 10, after the words cemeteries, delete the words "and any motor vehicle used while littering or dumping as defined in this section may be removed and impounded by law enforcement to the extent authorized by applicable law. An impounded vehicle may be held impound for not less than 15 days or final adjudication of the case, with the cost of imposed assessed against the violator. Number 2, on page 2, line 18, after the words 180 days, delete the words "and any motor vehicle used while littering or dumping as defined in this section may be removed and impounded by law enforcement to the extent authorized by applicable law. An impounded vehicle may be held in impound for not less than 15 days or final adjudication of the case, with the cost of the impound assessed against the violator." That is Councilmember Green's amendment.
So in a nutshell, members of the council and members of the public, what we're withdrawing is the amendment that I wanted to employ that would allow us to impound the vehicles of those who are violating our city, our neighborhoods by dumping what the contents are in their vehicles. It's important to recognize we aren't looking at everyday vehicles, for example. What we're looking at is an industry here where people get paid to remove trash from houses that are being renovated or from construction sites. And instead of them going to the proper place to dispose of them, which is the Almanasta landfill or even Allegiant Fields, depending on what the actual materials are, they choose to go into neighborhoods, low-income neighborhoods, neighborhoods that are a little bit dark at night, for example, under the interstates, and they empty the contents of their vehicles in the public right of way, and very honestly are trashing our city. One of the things that motivates me to be motivated about this is that I applaud the Department of Sanitation that has gone and cleaned up dumping sites under the interstate, near Annette Street, near St. Anthony Street and other streets like that. But then incredibly, as if they're watching, these guffaws, these people who decide that they're going to dirty our city, go back to the very same site and litter those sites. So what we're looking at is, and I just want to say this as a warning to those who would illegally dump in the city, they're going to be increased fines right now. There's a rewards program that's been enhanced, but also I haven't yet given up on the ability to say that if you're going to use a vehicle to trash our city, then you should lose the right to that vehicle. I was a little bit surprised by the ruling of the city attorney, since there are ways that we kind of put boots on cars that stop them from being used and alike. But since there's a due process concern here, in an abundance of caution, the amendment is being withdrawn, but I do intend to pursue whatever is done in other jurisdictions that allows the offending vehicle or the offending user of a vehicle to lose that vehicle. those vehicles are filled with trash. You see them on the roadways sometimes, and unfortunately, they're not going to the right place. They're going to the place where they can get away with it. And that is a disdain for, that is an abomination relative to certain communities, and I'm tired of it. And I'm going to come back and see what we can do in the future about that. But I'm very proud to support this amendment, this legislation. And I know that I feel confident that our council is going to go with it, because we have to make it clear that illegal dumping is simply not acceptable in our city. The end.
And once you said abomination, that was it. Any public comments? Well,
we have
public
one.
comments, please.
We have
You have cards?
Just one.
Yes. Mr. Ben Bagwell.
Yes, sir.
Hey,
So I'm
Ben.
going to talk about resource management again, which this kind of comes down to that factor of resource management and potentially lack of resources or places to throw this material. So in a city as big or small as New Orleans, an issue and why this is happening, because I deal with this problem of having to pick up trash and having to deal with this stuff. And I'm very familiar with how the sanitation department wants these resources managed. Like a group of us, Sage was involved, but did a project in New Orleans East where we actually cleaned up right of way, city property with our own resources, our own time, set aside the materials the way sanitation department likes it, piled up, just because I know how it works. And I want to make it as easy as for them, because I've also spoken with sanitation of how do we solve this problem, because it is an issue. So where I was going with that, we set aside these piles. We set the tires aside because they want tires separately. We set the trash aside. I use my Bobcat with my own time, my own resource, 10 hours for the community that I'm not even in. But my brothers asked for help for passionate people in New Orleans. I wish I was in a city truck. I wish I was in a sanitation dumpster in a Bobcat. That was all mine, my resources, my time. Like I said, when I'll volunteer to clean this building, I will do that. My question to you all, have any of you all gone to the Gentilly landfill personally to throw things away? Any of you?
Yes.
You have a truck?
Yes.
Okay. Unless you have a truck, basically, it's hard to throw something away there. So what I'm really coming to you as this resource management to help figure out these issues of recycling, waste, trash, dumping, is we need hubs similar to Jefferson Parish in our community, resource centers where if you in this neighborhood, you can go there to bring your material, similar to Elysian Fields, but in each district potentially, or in each neighborhood if we're going to a utopia. But we need to provide resources for people to throw these things away to make it easier, as opposed to charging you to go to a tipping fee to throw it away in Elysian Fields or Gentilly. That's all.
No, thank you, Mr. Ben. I think the work that you have done, Mr. Sage, and other groups actually inspired this effort. And, to support a lot of the work, and hopefully that the city will have a mechanism for fines to reward citizens who report illegal dumping, and then hopefully just rid our city of this plague. But thank you.
And my last question, just if I have a second.
No, go ahead, man.
I'm asking, I'm really here today and I've been here this whole time because something you all said last meeting would be discussed today on the agenda, which is something that Mr. Morrell brought up, which is sanitation contract for Area 2. It was supposed to be talked about, and I have the video where you said October 6th, we will talk about it. I don't see it on the agenda. I see item 30 and 50 where we're like changing funds around. My question is, have you got information? Have you approved these contracts? Is the recycling coming November 7th?
Yeah, Ben, that's kind of off
I
task here.
understand.
I mean, I'm sure there's something that you guys could talk about
So
personally.
my question is, I
Unless you want
talk
to do-
on item
yeah,
30 or
yeah.
50, or is it not even on the agenda?
Yeah, Councilman Morrell.
The item to be filed to allocate the money has not been filed yet. So that the anticipation at the previous meeting was that there would be an instrument filed to allocate the $2.5 million. That hasn't been filed yet, which is why it's not on the agenda. So it hasn't been filed or passed the council yet.
So when should that be for?
I'm not the author of that, so I don't know when that's going to get filed.
Perfect. I'm just making sure that those funds haven't been appropriated,
Yeah,
because
not
on
been
sanitation website, it says recycling is coming back November 7th. And I just want to educate you all that that recycling system is broken and is going to cost the city so much money because we use a recycling bin as a trash can, and the tipping fees of recycling are exponential and we don't have the funds for it. And
Thank
that's
you,
all.
Ben.
Thank
Thank you, man. Mr. Sage Michael.
Mr. Thomas, or Councilmember Thomas, may I just
Yeah, Councilmember Harris.
quickly speak to the last point? We passed dumping stations in various areas, just to your point about having hubs. The issue is that the city needs to identify where those hubs are going to be, but we are allocating resources to identifying and making hubs where people can easily bring their trash, et cetera, et cetera.
Thank you all for this ordinance. I believe in a campaign. I'm continually on the culture of cleanliness to meet the people where they are and move them forward. This ordinance helps that out. I wish I could backtrack because I got some video. I got about $800 worth of money I could have collected off this ordinance because identifying dumpers is something I do. It's a dangerous thing in New Orleans as well because people don't like to be identified when they're doing something illegal. But Councilman Thomas did, I did as well because we love our community. Thank you for that. Councilman Green, thank you. We had conversations about beautifying the Diamond Corridor in the future. I look forward to planning with you, with the community as well. We need a culture of cleanliness. Dutch Morial was a great mayor. He had a great program in the past where it involved holding business leaders accountable, engaging with our community, as well as imposing fines. I implore some type of program be endorsed by that citywide so we could really absorb this dumping in our community. Thank you.
No, thank you. You're one of the reasons for this. Former Mayor Mark Morial's Clean City Initiative was one of the most comprehensive. If you study the history of the city in the last 40 years, where municipal court judges, we would have 100 or 200 volunteers per district that would come out sometime. Hopefully we'll get back to that. Mr. Michael Burnside.
Councilmember Thomas.
Yes.
Just very, very quickly to Mr. Bagwell's point, what you've asked for has been filed about the sanitation contracts and will be taken up October 13th in the Budget Committee. Just wanted to let you know, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burnside.
Yay, I'm not the only one. Woo-hoo, party time. I'm glad these two gentlemen are here. You guys paid the money out to get a tire shredder, I think, in the previous budget cycle. That wasn't necessarily this actual elected group, but you, the city council, passed a budget that included a tire shredder. And I haven't made a big deal about it, but it's not my understanding that it's even been bought yet, much less placed anywhere. And I've got 2 tires on my property I dragged across the street from the vacant lot across the street because today all the trash was picked up by the trash people and they left the tires. And I thought, well, you know, 2 tires grow into 20 if you let them. So I'm now the inheritor of 2 tires I'd like to get rid of. And I'd like to know what happened to the tire shredding machine. And I'd like to know where it's going to be placed. And I don't have to know that today. If anybody wants to send me an email, I'd be happy to receive it. And if you don't, fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Councilmember Jeruso, is that what you wanted to speak on or you want to speak on the ordinance? Oh, Councilmember Green.
I do want to just state one thing for the record for those who are watching and make sure that we don't give any excuses to the people who are doing the illegal dumping that I'm talking about. Actually, if I had my druthers, I would have a video of it. We are talking about people who get paid and put debris in the backs of their vehicles or their attachments and simply know where to go and don't want to go because you have to pay. That doesn't distinguish us from any other parish. You can't just dump everything if you're a commercial dwelling. I mean, sorry, if you're a commercial business, you pay to do it because you've gotten paid to do it. These are people who have decided, and I know because I talk to residents who know some of the people who even dump in their own neighborhoods. It's a culture here. It's a culture amongst too many business owners who decide that I'm going to save money by getting rid of my trash at the corner of St. Anthony and North Roman because no one can see me. It's not because they don't know where to go. It's because of the personalities and also because they decided to do business incorrectly. This is a very, very important piece of legislation. It is also something that we need to recognize that as a city, it will help us to be cleaner. And I will also say this, that if you're going to use a truck, an open back truck or a dump truck, and you're going to go to a site and you're going to leave it, you should be penalized by not having the use of that vehicle to get there. But we'll take that up later.
Any online comments? There be no online comments. Move adopted.
Wait.
Okay,
So Councilman.
I'm getting ahead of myself.
You have to vote on your.
Yes, we have to vote on my amendment. So I move for approval of that amendment, which again withdraws the legislation or the proposed legislation relative to seizure of vehicles.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. by Councilmember Morrell and then seconded by Councilmember Thomas. Please vote your machines. And then again, this is that amendment. Okay. So now that we've voted on both amendments, Councilmember.
Well, 6 yeas, Councilmember Harris, 6 yeas, no nays. Your amendment or removal of your amendment is approved. Move adoption as amended.
Second.
Probably moved in second, moved by me, second by Councilmember Green. All in favor? Six yeas, no nays, and the ordinance is adopted. Thank you guys very much.
Okay, we're now gonna go to the bottom of page 49. Well, wait, let me do the top one. Ordinance calendar number 33,893 is being deferred until 10/20. Now, ordinance calendar number 33,894 by council members Jeruso, Harris, Green, King, Green, and Thomas. An ordinance to amend and reordain section 6-36, 6-37, 26-232, 26-242, 26-448, 66-258, 66-312, 66-313, 66-314, 66-315, 66-316, and 150-973 of the Code of the City of New Orleans to improve the quality of life of the residents of New Orleans by streamlining and making more effective the code enforcement process and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I just want to note a few things. First of all, this ordinance is co-sponsored by all of the district council members, which underscores how important blight is to each of us. Also, I think this is the first time I've been in a council meeting where there's been 3 separate ordinances offered by different council members related directly to blight. And as we spend a lot of time here today talking about how we improve our communities and life for people, no matter what neighborhoods they live in, blight is one of the biggest areas that everybody continues to talk to us about. The last thing I would just say before I get a little bit to what's in the ordinance very quickly is that I feel like we've also heard a lot lately about how enforcement needs to either be better or change. And while we can discuss that, remember, we're legislators. And so part of what we're trying to do is tighten the screws and make things easier for enforcement and the executive branch to do their jobs. And hopefully this is one of those things that helps. So let me just go through a few things very quickly. The first is if there's a daily fine hearing set in connection with a blight issue, then the daily fine hearing shall be set within 60 days. The setting of this daily fines hearing at the initial hearing shall constitute proper notice, and we just don't want that being delayed because daily fines are truly the hammer that can help move something out of blight. If the violations have not been remediated at the daily fines hearing, fines shall accrue daily from the date of the initial hearing. So again, you're not waiting till day 1. You could be waiting from day 45 or 60 getting started on the daily fines, and those add up extraordinarily quickly. As for the penalties in section 637, we changed this in large part modeled after what we were hearing from a number of council members, including Council Member Morrell. And this is what I call the slumlord provision, which is often in the case with apartment complexes, a single parcel of land includes multiple buildings. What's happening though is they are only charging one part of the complex and not all the units affected. So rather than having one violation, if there are 18 units that are affected, now code enforcement has the ability to cite the owner for all 18 violations. In addition, we're trying to put more teeth into the emergency procedures, specifically if there's an extreme accumulation of household hazardous waste. That can't be piled up on somebody's property. We've seen too many photos from every district about improperly stored gasoline or paint thinners in general. That is a threat to safety, and particularly during hurricane season. Also, one of my favorite topics about pools, we're proposing that after 8 days have passed following the posting of the notice, the city shall enter the premises to fill in any unfiltered or unfenced pool. I know a number of us in each of our districts have that problem. And then the last significant change I want to discuss is from Councilmember Thomas, who's raised this repeatedly, that as part of your occupational license, that part of your responsibility is to maintain your property. We don't allow somebody to get a license if they don't follow all the procedures. We won't let you out of it, but we don't do anything in the middle to follow it. So if you're not abiding by the minimum property maintenance rules while you're in the process of having your license, the city can hold that up until it gets taken care of. So again, I just want to say thank you to all of my colleagues. This has been a labor with everybody, and that it is important that we're all on the same page here. So Councilmember Green has moved for approval, been seconded by Councilmember Thomas.
We have some.
Oh, I'm sorry. You are right. Mr. Burnside, you did turn in a yellow card, and just for note, Maxwell Shierdolo turned in one in support as well. Thank you, Mr. Burnside. Sorry, I missed that.
Well, this is the third time, and
That's
Ms.
on.
Harris's, I don't mind so much because I said, I was just saying thank you, but Mr. Green, I'm going to have a chance to talk with you about my yellow card with regards to Gordon Plaza. This is the third time my yellow cards haven't been. dealt with.
This one I got, I just forgot. So
That's
it's on
fine.
me.
That's fine. I'm not necessarily even angry. I'm just really tired. So there are a couple points I want to bring into the public sphere. Okay. First, I've been told there's only like 30 code enforcement employees, period. That includes like everybody. That's not just inspectors or administrators or secretaries, like 30's it. And the last time I checked, we had like basically 400,000 people in the city. So if we had 40, then that means we've got one person in code enforcement for every 10,000 citizens. So it's not really practical to believe a citizen is necessarily that afraid of running into a code enforcement employee, much less one that's actually got a badge and can do something to them. It's a pretty small department, to put it bluntly. The next thing is my personal experience of code enforcement is rather extensive, and I believe that there's a problem with title research. I have 311 backups going 3 years of stuff just stuck into title research, and there it stays and there it dies. So a specific spot is title research. There's problems for me personally dealing with that reality. Since we have a new sheriff, I will not talk about sheriff sales, but what I will discuss briefly, because it's already a yellow light, is churches. Churches that own property never suffer a sheriff sale. Therefore, the code enforcement process lacks its final actual punishing stick. You can level all the fines you want, but you can't collect them and you can't seize the property. And unfortunately, I have to say that the idea of churches owning property is not just like one or two bad churches. It seems to be mildly endemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burnside. Just very quickly, to at least two of the points you raised. Number one is I think this council wants to know about the full-time equivalent, the employees in every department, because if we're deciding budgets based on number of employees and how they serve the public, then I think understanding how each department is properly staffed is important. And secondly, I agree with you about title research. It is the bane of Amanda Rizzo's existence when we get told that something's been hung up for a year or two in title research. So we want to make sure that goes faster.
There's another component to that. I think, say Representative Jason Hughes and Councilman Marino are taking a look at how do we begin to deal with the tax exempt status of churches or entities that actually participate as slumlords. So there may be some relief or some effort coming.
Thank you for that too. So that's all three. All right,
And there's
properly.
one comment online.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. This is
Getting ahead of
from
everything.
Lauren Jardell with Tulane University. She's a paid representative. She says Tulane University supports calendar number 33894 and encourages the city council to approve it. In the university area, some landlords do not properly maintain their properties or timely dispose of trash, even when private trash collection is contracted. This places undue burden on tenants and creates sanitary issues in the neighborhood. Improving the code enforcement process and increasing the fines of bad actors will help improve quality of life for all.
Thank you. All right, members, please vote your machines. 6 yeas, no nays, the ordinance carries. Thank you.
We're now going to go back to page 36. We have ordinance calendar number 33,868 by Councilmember Thomas by request. An ordinance to authorize the mayor of the city of New Orleans to enter into a first amendment to the cooperative endeavor agreement to amend the cooperative endeavor agreement between the city of New Orleans and the Fort Pike Volunteer Fire Department relative to the contract of providing fire protection services for the residents of St. Catherine's area of New Orleans East in exchange for payment for an additional 1 year, and to modify or reaffirm certain terms and conditions as more fully set forth in the amendment attached hereto as Exhibit 1 and incorporated and made a part hereof and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
More year for the Fort, an extension of another year for the Fort Pike Volunteer Fire Department. Also, in addition to $60,000, move adoption to the continuation, at least for a year, of this CEA. Moved by me, seconded by Councilmember Morrell. All in favor? 6 yeas, no nays, and it is adopted.
At the bottom of the page, ordinance calendar number 33,871 by Councilmember Thomas by request. An ordinance to authorize the mayor of the city of New Orleans to enter into a cooperative endeavor agreement between the city of New Orleans and the state of Louisiana to allow and facilitate the planning and construction of the Lower Ninth Ward Green Infrastructure Project as more fully set forth in the cooperative endeavor agreement form attached hereto as Exhibit A and made a part hereof and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
Another CEA where it's necessary to move state funds to the city, especially for the recipient agency. In this case, it's Sankofa. The amounts would be $150K priority 1, $2.65 million in priority 5, and our local match to match this allocation is $966,000. With that, I would move adoption. Moved by me, seconded by? Seconded by Councilmember King. All in favor, please? Six yeas, no nays, and it is adopted.
At the top of page 37, ordinance calendar number 33,872 has been deferred to October 20th.
So ordered.
Wait.
Right. Moreno's gone for the day.
At the bottom of the page, ordinance calendar number 33,873 by Councilmember King by request. An ordinance to authorize the mayor of the city of New Orleans to enter into a first amendment to the cooperative endeavor agreement to amend the cooperative endeavor agreement between the city of New Orleans and the United Way of Southeast Louisiana relative to the contract of holding its annual workplace campaign to raise funds from city employees and support of programs and services that directly benefit disadvantaged residents in Orleans Parish for an additional 2 years at no cost to the city, and to modify or reaffirm certain terms and conditions as more fully set forth in the amendment attached hereto as Exhibit 1 and incorporated and made a part hereof and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I make a motion, move to, there you go, to adopt. Second by Councilmember Harris. Five yeas, no nays, motion adopted. 4.
Wait.
Councilman Druso.
Everybody have to stay on the dais. Okay. Okay.
5 yeas, no nays, motion adopted. Thank you.
One moment, please. Okay, We're on page 31. We have ordinance calendar number 33,859 has been deferred to 10/20 and referred to the Budget Committee. We're on page 32. We have ordinance calendar number 33,860 has been deferred to October the 20th and referred to the Budget Committee. Ordinance calendar number 33,861 has been deferred to October the 20th and referred to the Budget Committee. On top of page 33, we have ordinance calendar number 33,862 has been deferred to October the 20th and referred to the Budget Committee. Ordinance calendar number 33,863 has been deferred to October the 20th and referred to the Budget Committee. We're now on top of page 38. We have ordinance calendar number 33,874 by Councilmember King by request. An ordinance to authorize the mayor of the city of New Orleans to enter into an amendment to a previously executed cooperative endeavor agreement between the city of New Orleans and the state of Louisiana, the Division of Administration, Office of Community Development regarding CDBG disaster recovery funds for the purpose of funding the city's activities under the CDBG Disaster Recovery Long-Term Community Recovery Program to amend said cooperative endeavor agreement relative to its duration as more fully set forth in Amendment Number 2 to the cooperative endeavor agreement form attached hereto and made a part hereof and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
Make a motion to move. Second by Councilmember Harris. Five yeas, no nays. Motion adopted.
At the bottom of the page, ordinance calendar number 33,875 by Councilmember Harris. An ordinance to amend and reordain section 154-877 of the Code of the City of New Orleans to designate official parking for Tulane University Police Department enforcement vehicles and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This ordinance designates 6 official parking spots downtown for Tulane University PD per their request. This is something that Tulane has been seeking since 2019, and it's even more important now that we're looking ways to leverage TUPD and other law enforcement agencies to support our NOPD. Are there any comments? All right, I'll move. Seconded by Councilmember Vice President Morrell. All in favor? Motion passes. Thank you.
We're now on top of page 40. We have ordinance calendar number 33,878 has been withdrawn. So ordered.
So ordered.
We have ordinance calendar number 33,879 has been deferred to October the 20th and referred to the Budget Committee.
So ordered.
On top of page 41, ordinance calendar number 33,880 has been deferred to October the 20th and referred to the Budget Committee. Page 42, ordinance calendar number 33,881 has been deferred to October the 20th and referred to the Budget Committee. On top of page 43, ordinance calendar number 33,882 has been deferred to October the 20th and referred to the Budget Committee. On top of page 44, ordinance calendar number 33,883 is deferred to October the 20th and referred to the Budget Committee. Ordinance calendar number 33,884 has been deferred to October the 20th and referred to the Budget Committee. On top of page 45, all matters. Ordinance calendar number 33,885 has been deferred to October 20th and referred to the Budget Committee. Ordinance calendar number 33,886 has been deferred to October the 20th and referred to the Budget Committee. On top of page 46, all matters. Ordinance calendar number 33,887 has been deferred to October the 20th, referred to the Budget Committee. Ordinance calendar number 33,888 has been deferred to October the 20th and referred to the Budget Committee. On top of page 47, all matters. Ordinance calendar number 33,889 has been deferred to October the 20th and referred to the Budget Committee. Ordinance calendar number 33,890 has been deferred to October the 20th and referred to the Budget Committee. On top of page 48, all matters. Ordinance calendar number 33,891 has been deferred to October the 20th and referred to the Budget Committee. Ordinance calendar number 33,892 has been deferred to October the 20th and referred to the Budget Committee. We're now on top of page 50. We have ordinance calendar number 33,895 by Councilmember Morrell. An ordinance to amend Division 49 of Article 3 in Section 70 of the Code of the City of New Orleans to ordain Section 70-415.317 of the Code of the City of New Orleans within said division to provide for application eligibility criteria for the New Orleans Recreation and Cultural Fund and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This is a pretty straightforward. This simply provides what the eligibility requirements will be to apply to the fund that we created last meeting. I'm working with my office to advertise to all parties who are interested what those requirements are. I'll go over them really quickly. It's name, IRS exempt status, assuming that they're a 501c3 or 509A, completed W-9s, and similar requirements that are typically tied to all grant programs. Further, we make sure that no grant awards can be used for political campaign or political donations. And we also make sure that individuals who participate in this fund have to sign that attestation that they will not discriminate based on race, color, national origin, sex, religion, gender identity, sexual orientation, age, or disability. And furthermore, we cap awards at $100,000 or 50% of the total budget of an existing organization. That's what it does. Ms. Clevenger, you have a comment?
Hi. I'm about to get a boot on my car, so I'm really stressed out. Can't afford that. I think the intent of this is really wonderful. I'm concerned because a lot of culture bearers and cultural community folks that I know don't know anything about this. So there was a meeting last night and a lot of people were concerned about the original ordinance because they hadn't, the common refrain was, you know, who was at the table. So as we go forward, I want to remind everybody of our history and this culture as a self-sustaining, resilient, but independent culture. And what we've seen since tourism has co-opted the culture and other entities make a lot of money off of our culture bearers who naturally want a piece of that. One of the biggest things we've seen is the advent of nonprofit organizations being the pass-through, and they become the cultural gatekeepers and get to decide who gets it and who doesn't, who's worthy and who's not. And that is something that actually changes the culture and of who these very proud people are. So we know we must support the culture, but one thing that we are really needing to address is the holistic support, which is affordable housing, which is jobs. I mean, Chief Tootie Montana was an artisan. That's how he supported his culture, right? And so we don't want to create, we saw a group earlier who has become a cultural gatekeeper. Millions of dollars are flowing through that person's organization and he's doling it out. But we have a lot of cultural organizations that have been around 15, 20, 25, 30 years, and they're not 501c3s, but they have a tremendous record in the community. So we want to make sure that we work with your office, we work with this council, and we find ways to make sure everyone's at the table and how do these grants get awarded. So
We appreciate your comments. That's your time. The purpose and the reason why you have these robust requirements, you're dealing with public funds. And this is not, in order to deal with over $7 million in public funds, there has to be a certain level of accountability and tracking of where the funds are spent. I do hear what you're saying, and we're working to identify who will be the management group who are dealing with this organization as dealing with this fund as a whole. And there will be opportunities to see through working with nonprofit partners, how we can partner with the correct people so that they can get access to funds for direct programming. But this is the best practices for how.
And I think there's a lot of understanding of that government funds have to be accounted for. We all want to make sure that there's a seat at the table and certain groups don't get this money and pay, like we've seen in the school system, the administration, the staff, all getting paid. There's a New York Times article on one of our leading institutions about how nonprofit monies are used to keep their staff and administrators in paychecks, where the very people they're saying the culture is so important are getting paid $200 a night. So,
I appreciate
yeah.
that. This money will go through a council process, and many council members have partnerships and work with culture bears, and we will make sure that they are given the opportunity.
All right. Thank you very much.
I have a comment, Mr. Vice President.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to make sure that Ms. Clevenger is kind of very similar to the message that I said earlier. If you have communications with and have outreach to some of the organizations, it's important to recognize that we're doing everything that we can to make sure that this is not a slush fund. So if there are requirements, as you see, are being put forth and that our vice president has gone over, those organizations should start today to get themselves qualified to be able to receive this money. Because what we're not going to do is to have the media or to have auditors come back and say that we didn't spend money according to what city guidelines are. Folks should be getting prepared today.
Right, and I have to go, but I would only say that, can we create some type of training?
We actually, we got to move along, but I am working with different financial institutions to offer free training to be able to get in compliance. This will not be the only year there's a fund, and we're going to work to get everybody in a position where they can take advantage of it. Thank you. All right. I will move that we adopt the ordinance. Can I get seconded by Councilmember Harris? All in favor, please vote your machines. 5 yeas. Yep, 5 yeas, no nays. The ordinance is adopted.
At the bottom of the page, ordinance calendar number 33,896 by council members Moreno and Harris. An ordinance to clarify that the city shall not collect or report nor develop policies covering the collection or reporting of data or information related to an abortion, miscarriage, or other reproductive health care act, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Council Member Moreno and I move this for approval. She's not here today, but I'll read her comments. Today, we're presenting another legal safeguard that confirms and codifies our collective will that no woman's private healthcare information shall be unnecessarily collected nor stored by the city of New Orleans. We have been steadfast and determined in our efforts to zealously protect women's rights to bodily autonomy and to express our fundamental belief in a person's right to choose. Nevertheless, we've also stated before, and we'll say again, our intent here is to prioritize to the furthest extent possible under the law, our public resources towards the issues that affect New Orleanians every day. With the challenges that we face today, we cannot lose our focus or allow political distractions to guide our efforts to build a safer, more equitable New Orleans for everyone. This legislation today clearly articulates to all city agencies a concise directive to protect privacy and our values. I ask my colleagues to join me on this effort on behalf of women and our allies here and across the state. I agree with this statement. And again, I think it takes us another step further to protecting a person's bodily autonomy in a world where that autonomy is increasingly under attack. So I will make the motion. There is a public comment by Bob Morrell. He's not here, but he is in support of this. Can I get a second? Oh, I got a second. All right, 5 yeas, motion passes. Thank y'all.
We're now on top of page 51. All matters. Ordinance calendar number 33,897 has been deferred to October the 20th. Ordinance calendar number 33,898 has been deferred to October the 20th. Page 52, all matters. Ordinance calendar number 33,899 has been deferred to October the 20th and referred to the Budget Committee. Ordinance calendar number 33,900 has been deferred to October 20th. On top of page 53, all matters or motion line over M22 383 has been deferred to October the 20th. Motion line over M22 384 has been deferred to October the 20th. On top of page 54, motion M22 429 by Councilmember Harris, establishing the following temporary emergency polling location changes as the official polling place for the specified precincts with the parish of Orleans for the upcoming November 8, 2022 open primary congressional election and the December 10th, 2022 open general congressional election. We have Ward 12, Precinct 3, original site Austerlitz Street, Baptist Church, 819 Austerlitz Street. New temporary site, the Renew Accelerated High School, 3649 Laurel Street. Ward 12, Precinct 5, original site Austerlitz Street, Baptist Church, 819 Austerlitz Street. The temporary site, the Renew Accelerated High School, 3649 Laurel Street.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'll move. Seconded by Councilmember Jeruso. All in favor? Everyone go vote. Thank you.
We're on top of page 55. We have motion M22 431 by Councilmember Harris, directing the City Planning Commission to conduct a public hearing to consider rescinding ordinance number 28,644 MCS zoning docket 821, which granted a conditional use to permit a wine shop in an HUB1 historic urban neighborhood business district, a CPC character preservation corridor design overlay district, and the Magazine Street use restriction overlay district on square 204, lot 14A in the 6th municipal district, bounded by Magazine Street, Constant Street, General Pershing Street, and Milan Street. Municipal addresses 4210 through 4214 Magazine Street.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This motion directs CPC to hold a public hearing to consider rescinding the conditional use for a wine shop at the designated location at the request of the owner of the building. Is there any public comment? All right, I'll move. Seconded by Councilmember Morel. Five yeas, motion passes. Thank you.
At the bottom of the page, we have motion M22 432 by Councilmember Jeruso, establishing the following permanent polling location shown under the new site as the official polling places for the below identified precincts within the parish of Orleans for the upcoming November 8, 2022 open primary congressional election and the December 8, 2022 open general congressional election. Ward 14, Precinct 13A, temporary site Elijah Burma Jr. Building, 5624 Ferret Street. New site Ellis Marcellus Jr. Building, 5625 Loyola Avenue. Ward 14, Precinct 14, Elijah Burma Jr. Building, 5624 Ferret Street. Ellis Marcellus Jr. Building, 5625 Loyola Avenue. Ward 14, Precinct 15, Elijah Burma Jr. Building, 5624 Ferret Street. Ellis Marcellus Building, Ellis Marcellus Jr. Building, 5625 Loyola Avenue. Ward 14, Precinct 16, Elijah Burma Jr. Building, 5624 Ferret Street. Ellis Marcellus Jr. Building, 5625 Loyola Avenue.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I have a 44 slide PowerPoint on this. All right, just kidding. It's been moved and seconded 5-0.
We know. We're on top of page 56. We have motion M 22-436 by council members Morel, Moreno, Jeruso, King, and Thomas. Directed in accordance with Council Rule 42, the Council Utilities Regulatory Office to issue and advertise a request for qualifications for legal consultants. The Utility Cable, Telecommunication, and Technology Committee recommended approval.
Thank you. Simply put, this simply allows for the Cure Office to publish an RFQ to get responses for legal counsel. This is something we've been dealing with for the last couple of months. We think we've got a good proposal put out there. The advertisement will start next week and it will run through the end of November. It will be advertised far and wide. If this was passed unanimously by the Utilities Committee, Mr. Burnside, you have a comment on this?
So one of my many problems with Curo is it only deals with Entergy. And one of my ongoing problems in my neighborhood is AT&T poles. So my good council person brought 8 slides, not 44 or whatever it was, 8 slides to a committee where I was not allowed to come in because of my fracas with the front door. And so she put on this is sometimes used negatively, but it's meant positively, a little dog and pony show, and everybody got to see, 8 of my poles. And I don't know exactly what day that was, but it was a long time ago now. And we still don't have a pole from AT&T dealt with. So AT&T is slow, and the recent contractors that they've sent out have to seemingly have a police escort to come into my neighborhood. So between not actually taking care of a pole, which was the victim of a car wreck, that's not AT&T's fault, right? And then Ida comes along and eventually some other crew puts splints on it. And then, time rolls on, right? And the council person decides to put it up, and allegedly AT&T comes and cares, and it's still not dealt with. So I don't know what Curo can do with regards to anybody who's not Entergy. I don't know what they can do with Cox. I don't know what they can do with AT&T.
Mr. Burnside, Curo has authority over Cox and AT&T as well.
But they are not exercising it.
Well,
and I say that cruelly and meanly to you because you've not heard this before, but I've been suffering for years now trying to find the right person to say, you put the finger on them so that they respond to you, because they do not respond to me. And I hate to say this in public because I deeply respect my councilwoman, but they don't seem to respect her and they don't seem to react to her. There is months have gone by.
Then here's what I would suggest. We have been trying to schedule a meeting at utilities to deal with Cox and AT&T. That is because of the plethora of Entergy problems. We haven't been able to move that meeting yet. When we have that meeting and we have that agenda put forth, we will make AT&T and Cox come to address that as one of the many issues they have to address. So the Utilities Committee will take that up. I will look at our meeting we have on October 26th and see if we can add that to the agenda as well. And I will make sure Keith speaks to you to make sure we're doing that. And they will respond when the Utilities Committee tells them to show up.
God willing. So the other thing that I do want to say publicly is, of course, abandonment of old communication infrastructure. Now, what I'm going to say now is not provable. It is my belief. It is my belief AT&T is moving its industry out of copper and into wireless. If that belief is true, it would rationalize some of the decisions AT&T has made in my neighborhood by essentially writing off some of their inherited from South Bell infrastructure that is just dangling around like those old payphone kiosks. So we have a separate problem from disrespect to an actual economic engine that seems to be turning our whole city into a playground of payphone kiosks. So I'll leave you alone because I know I've eaten up more of my time, and I will say thank you, and I'll go sit down like a good boy. But
you'll be back.
There's a level of anger here. There's a level of anger here that's been building up over years. And it's frustrating to try to find a solution.
A silent majority of people that are frustrated and angry with Cox and AT&T. We appreciate you being here, Mr. Burnside. All right, I move that we adopt the this resolution, the motion. Please vote your machines. Thank you. 5-0, the motion is adopted. The second, okay, sorry, Madam Clerk, I'm jumping ahead.
We have resolution R 22-437 by council members Morel, Jeruso, King, and Thomas. A resolution and order approving the application of Entergy New Orleans LLC for authority to fund and finance storm recovery reserves and related relief. Docket number UD 2201.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Ladies and gentlemen, this deals with the application at LERC regarding a bond request to recover storm costs as well as from Ida, as well as to replenish the storm fund. It is very time sensitive, as in we have to get to the bond commission by the 20th, so LERC can consider the application. I would like to note this following resolution after this, the two are tied together, but approval of the application to do the bonds does not cease our ongoing negotiation with Entergy on what actual Ida costs are. So just because we are allowing the bond to move forward does not mean the number that is currently attached to Ida costs will be the final number, as we are going through those costs the fine tooth comb. So is there any public comments? I don't see any. I will move to adopt the resolution. Seconded by Councilmember Harris. Please vote your machines. 5 yeas, no nays. The resolution is adopted. The next item, oh, sorry, jumping ahead again, Madam Clerk.
On top of page 57, resolution R 22-438 by council members Morel, Jeruso, King, and Thomas. In the matter of application of Entergy New Orleans LLC and the Louisiana Utilities Restoration Corporation for authority to fund and finance storm recovery reserves and related relief. Docket number UD 2201. The Utility Cable Telecommunication and Technology Committee recommended approval, and the resolution and order approving storm cost securitization agreement in principle.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This is the accompanying financing document attached to the item I previously described. It is identical and it is wrote. I would move that we adopt the resolution. Wait for the machine to reset. Okay, so I will move. Can I get a second?
It's done.
The machine is not working.
Oh,
I will move. Councilman Green seconds. I'll do it by acclamation. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0 resolution. That resolution is adopted.
we have motion,
I'm handling these for the president, Madam Clerk.
motion M 22-439 by Councilmember Moreno, adding Councilmember Morel. A motion suspending Rule 1 of the rules and regulations of the City Council and establishing the regular council meeting schedule for the year 2023.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Members, this simply establishes what the meeting schedule will be for next year. I will move. Can I get a second? Seconded by Councilmember Green. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it is 5-0.
At the bottom of the page, motion M 22-440 by Councilmember Moreno, adding Councilmember Morel, a motion adopting the holiday schedule for city government for the year 2023.
Thank you. The motion does exactly what it says, also is procedural. I will move. I see no public comment. I will move adoption of the motion.
Hey, I'll be added to the holiday schedule.
Councilmember Green
Lemonade.
seconds. And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, is 5-0.
We're now on top of page 60. We have motion M 22-447 by council members King and Harris. Directing the City Planning Commission to conduct a public hearing to amend and reordain ordinance number 4264 MCS as amended by ordinance number 26,413 MCS as amended, the comprehensive zoning ordinance of the city of New Orleans to amend Article 19 to establish a new interim zoning district to be named the Lower Algiers Rural Protection Interim Zoning District.
Madam Clerk, we have several comment cards, all in support. In the interest of time, I'll just read the names. Shannon.
Council member. You need to take yourself off of this.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. All right, disregard that. I'm going to recuse
No,
myself,
no. We have to remove your name.
remove
from,
my
uh,
name,
You have
on
to
here.
move to remove.
move to remove.
Adam? Are we moving to remove his name? Yes.
I'll make that motion. You have to recruit, yeah.
I just sit back and wait for instructions.
Okay, so wait,
Oh, okay. I move.
Adam. Could we, for a minute, come in. So council member, all you need to do is ask that your name be withdrawn off of this ordinance. That's it. We're not gonna move.
All right, at this time, I ask that my name be withdrawn from the ordinance.
Okay.
I need to give the reason as well.
Okay, so we have speakers, correct? No? Oh, okay. So now,
Is anyone here to talk about this? You submitted a card. Okay, no. All right, thank you.
all right, so we can take the vote.
All right, we're gonna add these cards to the record.
I have 3 online comments.
Oh, and there, oh, how many?
3.
Let's add those to the record as well. And I'm gonna go ahead and move. I need a second. Seconded by Council Vice President Morrell. 4 yeas with 1 recusal.
Wait, the city attorney has something to say.
My basis for recusal is that I'm a property owner in the area that this is near.
Now, we're gonna go to motion M 22-448 by Councilmember King. Directing the City Planning Commission to conduct a public hearing to consider a zoning change from an HURM2 Historic Urban Multifamily Residential District to an HUMU Historic Urban Neighborhood Mixed-Use District on Square 124, lots 1, 2, 2R, an undesignated lot, and 5D in the second municipal district bounded by Iberville Street, Corzette Street, Bienville Street, and Basin Street. Municipal addresses: 235 Basin Street, 237 Basin Street, 1208 Bienville Street, and 1216 Bienville Street.
Second by Councilman Harris. 5 yeas, 6 yeas. Motion's adopted. Thank you.
Give me a minute.
Madam Clerk, is it a time to move for ordinances on first reading?
Yes, sir.
I would like to move to ordinances on first reading. Can I get a second?
Second.
Seconded by everybody.
Everybody.
Please vote your machines.
No issues there. Oops.
We need a move and a second, please.
Move up, seconded by Councilmember Harris. Please vote your machines.
Okay.
Yay.
Ordinance on first reading, calendar number 33901 by Councilmember Morrell, an ordinance to establish the renter anti-displacement fund as Division 48 of Article 3 and Section 70 of the Code of the City of New Orleans to ordain Section 70-415.308 through 70-415.311 of the Code of the City of New Orleans within said David division and otherwise to provide with respects thereto. Ordinance calendar 33902 by Councilmember Moreno, an ordinance to amend and reordain Articles 21 and 26 of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance, Ordinance number 4264 MCS as amended by Ordinance number 26413 MCS and subsequent amendments to create a new temporary use category for a food pop-up vendor host within Article 21, Section 21.8 temporary use, and to make recommendations for any other amendments deemed necessary and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. Ordinance calendar 33903 by Councilmember Jeruso, an ordinance to grant an amendment to ordinance number 23103 MCS zoning docket 16/08 to permit the expansion of an existing primary educational facility, Langston Hughes Academy, to include the adjacent lot 51, which is to be developed with a new structure. The subject property is located in an HUR as Historic Urban Single Family Residential District, a portion of lot 13, Bayou St. John subdivision, existing Langston Hughes Academy site, and lot 51. Square A, DSAC Place in the 3rd Municipal District, bounded by Trafalgar Street, DSAC Boulevard, and Gentilly Boulevard. Municipal address 3519 Trafalgar Street and 3244 DSAC Boulevard, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. Ordinance calendar 33904 by Councilmember Harris, Moreno, Morel, Jeruso, King, Green, and Thomas. An ordinance to require the Department of City Civil Service, an ordinance with Section 4-1503 of the Home Rule Charter to evaluate and provide recommendations to the City Service Commission and the City Council relative to amend the classified pay plan to increase to market rate the minimum annual salary of the fire class code to the fire department and otherwise to provide with respects thereto. Ordinance calendar 33905 by Councilmember Thomas by request, an ordinance authorizing the mayor of the City of New Orleans to enter into a cooperative endeavor agreement between the City of New Orleans, the city, the Industrial Development Board of the City of New Orleans, Louisiana, Inc., the IDB for a term greater than 1 year for the public purpose of redevelopment of the former Six Flags property in the City of New Orleans as more fully detailed in the cooperative endeavor agreement form attached hereto as Exhibit A and otherwise to provide with respects thereto. Ordinance calendar 33906 by Councilmember Jeruso, an ordinance to amend and reordain Chapter 154 Traffic and Vehicles, Section 154-2 to ordain Chapter 154 Traffic and Vehicles, Section 154-13 and 154-14 of the Code of the City of New Orleans to prohibit personal delivery devices on the public right-of-way and otherwise to provide with respects thereto. Ordinance calendar 33907 by Councilmember Thomas by request, in order to amend and reordain Section 90-121 of the Code of the City of New Orleans relative to the payment of police officers through the Office of Police Secondary Employment for secondary employment opportunities or private detail work, to amend officer pay schedules for the time-based jobs, to amend the administrative fee schedule to include the Juneteenth holiday as a specific holiday and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. Ordinance calendar 33908 by Councilmember Thomas and Moreno, in ordinance to establish Article 26 shopping carts within Chapter 146 of the Code of the City of New Orleans to establish provisions governing the use, control, and abandonment of shopping carts within the City of New Orleans and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. Ordinance calendar 33909 by Councilmember Thomas, by Councilmember Green, King, and Harris by request. An ordinance to authorize the mayor of the city of New Orleans to enter into the First Amendment to a previously executed cooperative endeavor agreement between the city of New Orleans and the Metropolitan Human Service District relative to collaborate and engage in a referral relationship with community organizations to provide case management service as required in section 330 of Public Health Service Act, Care for the Homeless Program, to modify the provisions thereof and extend the term thereof for 2 years or more as more fully set forth in the First Amendment form attached hereto as Exhibit 1 and made a part hereof and otherwise to provide with respects thereto. Ordinance calendar 33910 by Councilmember Green, Harris, and King by request. An ordinance to authorize the mayor of the city of New Orleans to enter into a First Amendment to a previously executed cooperative endeavor agreement by and between the city of New Orleans and Dillard University. The city and Dillard desire to accomplish a valuable public purpose for providing support and service to vulnerable citizens while providing a robust clinical experience for students in the healthcare field to modify the provisions thereof and extend the term thereof for 2 years as more fully set forth in the First Amendment form attached hereto as Exhibit 1 and made part hereof and otherwise to provide respects thereto. Ordinance calendar 33911 by Councilmember Green, Harris, and King by request. An ordinance to authorize the mayor of the city of New Orleans to enter into the First Amendment to a previously executed cooperative endeavor agreement between the city of New Orleans and the Star Cooperation relative to accomplish a valuable public purpose of promoting health, hope, and dignity for the New Orleans homeless through accessible and comprehensive care regardless of a client's ability to pay by providing shelter and social services to homeless and those susceptible to homeless individuals regardless of their ability to pay, to modify provisions thereof and extend the term thereof for 2 years as more fully forth in the First Amendment attached hereto as Exhibit 1 and made as part of and otherwise to provide with respects thereto. Ordinance calendar 33912 by Councilmember Moreno, an ordinance to amend and reordain Chapter 14, Section 14.1, 14-306, 14-307, and Chapter 30, Section 30-7 to ordain Chapter 14, Section 14-308 through 14-314 to create live entertainment permitting regulations and otherwise to provide respects thereto. Ordinance calendar 33913 by Councilmember Morel and an ordinance to amend Section 114-126, 114-135, and 114-204 of the Code of the City of New Orleans relative to the employees' retirement system of the city of New Orleans to lower the retirement system funding ratio threshold required to permit the retirement board of trustees to provide one or more cost of living increase or bonus for members who have retired and increase the employee contribution to the retirement system and otherwise to provide respects thereto. Ordinance calendar 33914 by council members Jeruso, Moreno, Green, and Thomas by request. An ordinance to amend ordinance number 28-862 MCS as amended, entitled an ordinance providing an operating budget of revenues for the city of New Orleans for the year 2022 to appropriate federal grant funds to the mayor's office of Homeland Security to cover emergency costs during the aftermath of Hurricane Zeta and otherwise to provide respects thereto. Ordinance calendar 33915 by council member Jeruso, Moreno, Green, and Thomas by request, and ordinance to amend ordinance number 28-863 MCS as amended, entitled an ordinance providing an operating budget of expenditures for the city of New Orleans for year 2022 to appropriate federal grant funds to the mayor's office of Homeland Security to cover emergency calls during the aftermath of Hurricane Zeta and otherwise to provide respects thereto. Ordinance calendar 33916 by council members Jeruso, Moreno, Green, and Thomas by request, and ordinance to amend ordinance number 28-862 MCS as amended, entitled an ordinance providing an operating budget of revenues for the city of New Orleans for year 2022 to appropriate federal grant funds to the mayor Mayor's Office of Homeland Security to cover emergency calls during the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina and otherwise to provide respects thereto. Ordinance calendar 33-917 by Councilmember Jeruso, Moreno, Green, and Thomas by request. An ordinance to amend ordinance number 28-863 MCS as amended entitled. An ordinance providing an operating budget of expenditures for the city of New Orleans for the year 2022 to appropriate grant funds to the Mayor's Office of Homeland Security to cover the cost during the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina and otherwise to provide respects thereto. Ordinance calendar 33-918 by Councilmember Jeruso, Moreno, Green, and Thomas by request. An ordinance to amend ordinance number 28-862 MCS as amended entitled. An ordinance providing an operating budget of revenues for the city of New Orleans for the year 2022 to appropriate federal grant funds awarded by FEMA to the Mayor's Office of Homeland Security to cover emergency calls during the aftermath of Tropical Storm Nate and otherwise to provide with respects thereto. Ordinance calendar 33-919 by Councilmember Jeruso, Moreno, Green, and Thomas by request. An ordinance to amend ordinance number 28-863 MCS as amended entitled. An ordinance providing an operating budget of expenditures for the city of New Orleans for year 2022 to appropriate federal grant funds awarded by FEMA to the Mayor's Office of Homeland Security to cover emergency calls during the aftermath of Tropical Storm Nate and otherwise to provide respects thereto. Ordinance calendar 33-920 by Councilmember Jeruso, Moreno, Green, and Thomas by request. An ordinance to amend ordinance 28-862 MCS as amended entitled, an ordinance providing an operating budget of revenues for the city of New Orleans for the year 2022 to appropriate grant funds for the Mayor's Office of Homeland Security to cover emergency costs during the aftermath of Hurricane Sally and otherwise to provide respects thereto. Ordinance calendar 33-921, by Councilmember Jeruso, Moreno, Green, and Thomas by request. An ordinance to amend ordinance number 28-863 MCS as amended entitled. An ordinance providing an operating budget of expenditures for the city of New Orleans for the year 2022 to appropriate federal grant funds to the Mayor's Office of Homeland Security to cover emergency calls during the aftermath of Hurricane Sally and otherwise to provide with respects thereto. Ordinance calendar 33-922 by Councilmember Jeruso, Moreno, Green, and Thomas by request. An ordinance to amend ordinance number 28-862 MCS as amended entitled, an ordinance providing an operating budget of revenues for the city of New Orleans for year 2022 to appropriate federal grant funds to the Mayor's Office of Homeland Security to cover emergency calls during the aftermath of Hurricane Sally and otherwise to provide respects thereto. Ordinance calendar 33-923 by Councilmember Jeruso, Moreno, Green, and Thomas by request. An ordinance to amend ordinance number 28-863 MCS as amended entitled, an ordinance providing an operating budget of expenditures for the city of New Orleans year to appropriate federal grant funds to the Mayor's Office of Homeland Security to cover emergency calls during the aftermath of Hurricane Sally and otherwise to provide with respects thereto. Ordinance calendar 33-924 by Councilmember Jeruso, Moreno, Green, and Thomas by request. An ordinance to amend ordinance number 28-862 MCS as amended entitled, an ordinance providing an operating budget of revenues for the city of New Orleans for the year 2022 to appropriate private funds awarded by the United States Conference of Mayors Reform and Justice Grant Program to fund the Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion Initiative in partnership with the city of New Orleans for individuals who cycle in and out of the criminal legal system and otherwise to provide respects thereto. Ordinance calendar number 33-925 by Councilmember Jeruso, Moreno, Green, and Thomas by request. An ordinance to amend ordinance number 28-863 MCS as amended entitled. An ordinance providing an operating budget of expenditures for the city of New Orleans for the year 2022 to appropriate private funds awarded by the United States Conference of Mayors Reform and Justice Grant Programs to fund the Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion Initiative in the partnership with the city of New Orleans for individuals who cycle in and out of the criminal legal system and otherwise to provide respects thereto. calendar number 33-926 by Councilmember Jeruso, Moreno, Green, and Thomas by request, an ordinance to amend ordinance number 28-863 MCS as amended, entitled an ordinance providing an operating budget of expenditures for the city of New Orleans for the year 2022 to transfer Nord Aquatics wage reserve to the maintenance to assist with facility maintenance costs and otherwise supervise with respects thereto. Ordinance calendar 33-924 by council members Jeruso, Moreno, Green, and Thomas by request. An ordinance to amend ordinance calendar number 28-863 as amended, entitled an ordinance providing an operating budget of revenues for the city of New Orleans for the year 2022 to appropriate funds awarded by the Department of Homeland Security to the New Orleans Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness for the fiscal year 2020 rollover funds to purchase radiology and nuclear detection equipment for the region and to pay salaries to the employees working the grant and otherwise to provide respects thereto. Ordinance calendar 33-928 by Councilmember Jeruso, Moreno, Green, and Thomas by request. An ordinance to amend ordinance number 28-862 MCS as amended, entitled an ordinance providing an operating budget of revenues for the city of New Orleans for the year 2022 to appropriate federal grant funds to the Office of Community Development to provide funding for the affordable housing financial gap of rental project evictions, prevention, and utility assistance, and otherwise to provide with respects thereto. Ordinance calendar 33-929 by Councilmember Jeruso, Moreno, Green, and Thomas by request, and ordinance to amend ordinance calendar number 28-863 MCS as amended, entitled an ordinance providing an operating budget of expenditures for the city of New Orleans for the year 2022 to appropriate federal grant funds to the Office of Community Development to provide funding for the affordable housing financial gap of rental projects, eviction, prevention, and utility assistance, and to provide with respects thereto. Ordinance calendar 930 by Councilmember Jeruso, Moreno, Green, and Thomas by request. An ordinance to amend ordinance number 28-863 MCS as amended, entitled an ordinance providing an operating budget of expenditures for the city of New Orleans for the year 2022 to transfer mosquito, termite, and rodent control board wedges to other operating and otherwise to provide with respects thereto. Ordinance calendar 33-931 by Councilmember Jeruso, Moreno, Green, and Thomas by request. An ordinance to amend ordinance calendar number 28-862 MCS as amended, entitled an ordinance providing an operating budget of revenues for the city of New Orleans for year 2022 to appropriate grant funds to the mayor's office of Homeland Security to cover emergency costs during COVID-19 emergency and otherwise to provide respects thereto. Ordinance calendar 33-932 by Councilmember Jeruso, Moreno, Green, and Thomas by request. An ordinance to amend ordinance number 28-863 MCS as amended, entitled an ordinance providing an operating budget of expenditures for the city of New Orleans for year 2022 to appropriate federal funds to the mayor's office of Homeland Security to cover emergency costs during COVID-19 emergency and otherwise to provide respects thereto. Ordinance calendar 33-933 by Councilmember Jeruso, Moreno, Green, and Thomas by request, and ordinance to amend ordinance number 28-863 MCS as amended, entitled an ordinance providing an operating budget of expenditures for the city of New Orleans for the year 2022 to appropriate funds within the French Quarter Improvement Operating Budget fund to the mayor's office of Public Safety Support Service to provide necessary equipment for direct network connections to the real-time crime center, with crime cameras being installed within the French Quarter as part of the French Quarter Economic Development District, public safety initiatives, and otherwise to provide respects thereto. Ordinance calendar 33-934 by Councilmember Thomas, and an ordinance to temporary waive certain fees, permit fees, and requirements within and around the Oliver Bush Park located at 2500 Fat Dominoes Avenue, New Orleans, Louisiana, in conjunction with the Lower Ninth Ward Community Wellness Consortium. Antoine Fat Domino's renaming celebration event on Saturday, October 15th from 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. to specify the durations and boundaries of said waiver and to provide otherwise respects their calendar 33-936 by Councilmember Moreno, Morel, Harris, Green, Jeruso, King, by request, an ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of New Orleans to enter into a cooperative endeavor agreement between the city of New Orleans and the Bio District New Orleans for a greater term than 1 year for the public purpose of using the incremental increases in undedicated taxes collected within the boundaries of the district to induce economic development and other activities necessary for convenience thereto for the enhancement of bioscience and health products, including but not limited to projects as more particular identified in ORS 3390, 39.72 of the Louisiana Revised Statutes within the district of the city of New Orleans as more fully detailed in the cooperative endeavor agreement form attached hereto as the exhibit and otherwise to provide with respects thereto. Ordinance calendar 33-937 by Councilmember Morrell and ordinance to amend and reordain chapter 159, section 159-2 and 159-3 and ordinance section 159-4 and 159-5 to establish the billing dispute and appeals procedures for the Sewage and Water Board of New Orleans and otherwise to provide respect thereto. This completes the ordinance on first reading.
Those are all the ordinances on first reading.
Unanimous, we're adjourned. There you go.